The internet can totally see me now, according to our friends over at Google. Now, they can't actually see me because I've got this logo set up, but in theory, if this is working, then the internet can totally see me now. Nobody is watching, but that's okay. Hey, how you guys doing? So, in theory, this is going live. If not, you could watch it later, I guess, but then there's not going to be a lot of questions. Hey, somebody's watching, so that's pretty cool. If you guys want to chat in the thing and let me know that I'm not just completely high, that's kind of cool too. You may have noticed the title of this video is something about plague monks, which I can show you right there. So there's my upside down plague monks, which are upside down. There you go, check that out right there. Hey, Falcon. You guys can hear me, right? Everything sounds okay? Let me know. I'm seeing the bouncy little line in my audio thing. Sound is good. That's great. I'm going to just move a little bit closer. All right. Cool. So, some of you have probably been watching some of the videos. There was a video I did recently about Age of Sigmar and how I think it's a good idea, and I've been doing some stuff about it. I've been putting some stuff on social media of the stuff that I've already painted. I've got, let's see, I got Warriors of Chaos. I've got, those guys are all done and painted. I've got Putrid Blight Kings, which are awesome looking models. I've got 5 of them done, and I'm going to do another 5 just because they're so cool. And they're so modular, you can kind of slap them together and they don't look the same. When you build 5 of them, you can build another 5 that look a lot different, which I really like. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's see here. What else? I've got some Chaos Knights, which are not finished yet, but I do have the Varangard, which are a relatively new kit. And I still, like I've said in many videos, think that they were too expensive, but I've painted them and they're done. You can kind of look on Facebook, you can look on a lot of the other pages to kind of see that kind of stuff and see what kind of paint jobs I've been giving them. I'm trying to kind of head more towards Nurgle type stuff, but one of the things I like so much about Age of Sigmar is that you can mix. So I can do, Chaos stuff with kind of a Nurgle bent, but I can also throw in Beastmen, because technically in new rules they're part of the same Chaos keyword. And then there's also Skaven, which is what we see here today. Here are our Skaven. And these are Skaven Plague Monks, and the nice thing about the Skaven Plague Monks is that they also have the Nurgle keyword. My Beastmen don't, but they have the Chaos keyword. These guys have both the Chaos keyword and the, what do you call it, the Skaven, or the Chaos and Nurgle keyword. So, you get your round bases, so that way you know that it's definitely a Age of Sigmar box, plus the fact that it says Age of Sigmar on it. And then there is a bunch, and this was a relatively inexpensive kit. This is like, you can build 20 dudes in this, okay? And granted, they're small, but you can build 20 guys in here, and there's probably about, I think it was maybe 35 bucks, or maybe, yeah, I think it was $35. Maybe it was a little bit less. I got it from my local shop, which is called, what's my local shop called? My local shop is called Flying Phoenix Games, and he sells GW stuff at 20% off, so I got it for like 28 bucks. All right, so you can kind of see here, got a bunch of stuff there. So this is the instruction guide on how to build things. Again, this is upside down. I'm going to try to figure out how to fix that. So yeah, this is the instruction guide, and it's kind of cool because it shows you all the different parts. They're very simple to do, but then it also has all of the rules. So you can go download them if you want, from the website and all that stuff, but they're also putting the rules in multiple languages and all that stuff. So that's pretty cool. Oh, thank you. I got a comment on my hat. I appreciate it. Normally, if you see me wearing a hat, it's because I haven't taken a shower yet today. So yeah, I have to go to the dentist later on, so I'll take a shower before I go to there. But yeah, generally, if I'm wearing a hat, it's because Yeah, and also it's because I've actually found a hat that fits, because I have a humongous head. So generally, if you find me with a hat, it's because I haven't necessarily taken a shower today, and I have actually found a hat that fits. So let's see here. What have we got? Some stuff in here. Whoever did the box design for the new Age of Sigmar stuff did a fantastic job. I agree. I do really like the new box art. In comparison, especially to the older fantasy kind of red and yellow kind of, or maroon and yellow, this new stuff I think is really kind of cool. And I just noticed this a while back too. Everything that's Skaven, and I don't know if this is an inside joke or what, I don't know if you can see it, everything that's Skaven has a little rat hidden somewhere on the box. I don't know why that is, but I've noticed that on a couple of different things. I've got the Plague Claw catapult thing, which is also Nurgle Skaven stuff, and on the box, like on one of the little tabs, this little tab like here on that box, it had a little tiny, a little tiny rat. You can kind of see him right there, and that's kind of interesting. I don't know if that's an inside joke or what's going on, but so yeah. Let's see here. So this is a big pile of sprue is what this is right here. Let's see, what other things do we got? Audio is good, glad to hear it. Tim Boddington says, I like Age of Sigmar, it got me into Warhammer. Yeah, it's same here. I'm honestly, I was a 40k player for a long time, and then I kind of got out of it, and I was pretty much out of GW altogether. And I always thought fantasy stuff was cool, but when I started to see this, when I started to see the Age of Sigmar stuff, I was like, so if I'm reading the rules right, I can pull a little bit of this stuff and a little bit of that stuff, put it all together, and make a force that I want to make. So, yeah, I was kind of sold. Plus, I love all the Nurgle stuff. I've just always loved, not all. There's certain Nurgle pieces I don't like. So, let's see here. Let's see. Broken Colony says it could be a security thing. It's not the type of thing to knock off boxes would copy. The little tiny rat icon could be. It could be a security thing. I haven't really noticed anything like it on any of the other boxes, so I don't know if it's just somebody who, like maybe the person who does the design for the boxes just really loves Skaven, so he puts a little rat on there, like as his little thing. I don't know. It's kind of cool. Maybe the rat symbol is to let you know that no rats were harmed during the making of the box. I guess that's probably, statistically it's probably not true. At some point, in a factory, someone probably set a pallet on a rat. They didn't mean to, but it probably happened. So, let's see here. What else have we got? I don't understand the Sigmar hate, not a wargamer. Is it because old minis aren't allowed in organized play, or is it the rules themselves? Well, let's see here. This is Netos Volkava. For one thing, there is no organized play anymore as far as Games Workshop is concerned. They don't do that anymore. There are obviously people who still do tournaments, but Games Workshop themselves doesn't do tournaments anymore. So, it's not that. I think that the hate is, and I kind of mentioned this before in a couple of the videos, I really feel that what it's about is because a lot of the older players, because Warhammer Fantasy, if I remember correctly, has been around for maybe like 30 years. So all of a sudden they just completely changed the rules, everything changed. Now granted, all the old stuff was still totally usable. If you had models from 20 years ago, you could still find rules online for free to download and play them. But the kind of transition from one thing to another just really, I don't know, it didn't really work, I think, as a PR move on Games Workshop's part. They pretty much just were like, oh, guess what? We've completely destroyed the old world that you guys have been playing, in for 30 years, and we've completely just ripped off the Band-Aid and done a completely new thing. And I think that that's maybe part of the problem. So yeah, I get the feeling that that's the big problem that makes people kind of unhappy. So let's see here. What else are we going to talk about here? Let's see what some of the other forces besides Chaos. I wish. Jay Flanagan says, I wish that some of the other forces besides Chaos would get some love. Yeah, I get the feeling it's maybe a resources thing. Like they only have so many resources to be able to put into, like if they could change everything all at once, I'm sure they'd love to, but they don't have the resources to do it. So they kind of pick and choose. And I get the feeling they probably pick on what sells really well. Chaos stuff sells well, in fantasy, I think. And then, they've done some Skaven stuff and things, but there hasn't been a lot of new stuff. Most of the new stuff has been, like you said, under the Chaos banner. What am I going to do with the little ratties? Well, I'm going to build them. They can be built either with 2 fetid blades, or they can be built with a fetid blade and a woe staff. And I'm going to make them that way because then I will get to use both weapons when I attack. So yeah, that's my plan. Let's see here. Let's see here. What else have we got in the comments? I think it's the total change to Warhammer that people hate. People hate change, but it isn't like the last edition is outlawed. That's very true, Stuart Perry. It's you can still play 8th edition. I was just at an event in Wapaka, Wisconsin, probably, gosh, I don't know, about a month ago. This big event that's called Wapaka, which was one of the biggest Warhammer 8th edition, or what Warhammer Fantasy tournaments in the Midwest. And now that things have changed, now they're just kind of more like a miniatures event. So there was Infinity there was 8th edition, there was an 8th edition team tournament, there was Sigmar, there was 40K, there was War Machine. So they've expanded now and gone into a lot of different things instead of just being fantasy. But like I said, there was still 2 fantasy tournaments, like a standard fantasy tournament and a team tournament. So yeah, let's see here. What else have we got? This little thing here is kind of weird for the Plague Monks. Been thinking about adding these to my Age of Sigmar Nurgle force. Yeah, they're cool because they have the Nurgle keyword. They a lot of the effects that Nurgle, especially wizards and stuff like that, have, a lot of Nurgle's rot and all those things, will damage everybody around them except people who have the Nurgle keyword. So these guys can be in the middle of the fray and then still, they'll be fine. It'll be cool because they'll just be able to, just suck it up because they have the Nurgle keyword. Whereas for my army, if the Beastmen get into that kind of area of effect blast, they will get messed up because they don't have the Nurgle keyword. So let's see here. What else have we got? Maybe an Age of Blood Bowl may have been a fun idea. From what I understand, they're bringing Blood Bowl back, so I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know that they're going to completely, simplify the rules. I think because the rules have been out for so long and because there have been video games that have used the exact same even rules where it's all turn-based and you can see the dice rolls and all that stuff, I get the feeling that probably that the Age of Sigmar, or that Blood Bowl is going to probably not go with this route. And a lot of people keep saying, oh, well, they're going to do this to 40K next. They're going to Age of Sigmarify 40K. I'd be really surprised if they would, because that's their big cash cow. So I don't think that they're probably going to do that. Let's see, what other things have we got? Tobin Manthorpe says, whoa, staff. It's not that kind of woe staff, but I see what you're saying there. It's maybe if I named one of the little rat guys Neo or Keanu Reeves, then it could be a woe staff. I could see that. Let's see here. What else have we got? Skaven have always been very cool models. Yeah, I mean, I've always liked them, but I was always turned off by the concept of having to do, like, possibly hundreds of them in the old rules, which is why now I can do a unit of 20, which is not going to be an unsubstantial, number of models, but I can do that, and then I can start to go into, do other stuff, and I don't have to make several hundred of them. 40K is such a mess at the minute. Plastic Sturgeon, you're probably on the same page that I am to some degree, and other people still love it. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to be going to Adepticon in a couple of months. No, not even a couple of months. Like just over a month. And, it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to it, and there's a humongous amount of 40K players there. But I've got some friends that are trying to get back into it as a competitive thing, and they're just kind of at a loss, sometimes for like different things to, like, they're just seeing how many different things there are going on. There's all these data slates and all this stuff, and then you have to go through and read the tournament organizers, like, basically version of the rules, because you can't just use the 40K rules and try to have a tournament at the same time. It's just nearly impossible. So there's all these different Adepticon special rules and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure, they're gonna have to figure that kind of stuff out. Let's see here. The School League is decent for pickup games, adds random objectives for both players. Okay. Tim Boddington, what do you do with all your empty sprues? Actually, and I should make a video about this. I went to a yard sale or something, a rummage sale, an estate sale, and I found a really old meat grinder. you know, from like the 40s or 50s. And I will take pieces of sprue, and I'll take that meat grinder, and I'll clamp it to my workbench down in the basement, and I will get a workout by cranking that meat grinder and cranking empty sprues through it to get weird little particles and bits, which then I use sometimes in terrain as like scatter. You know, like I glue it all down and all that stuff. But those chunks totally work for that kind of stuff. So I do have a box in the basement that's just empty sprue. And every once in a while, my wife is like, "Are you going to do something with this?" And I'm like, and I show her a very small little bowl of like, "Well, this is what I've done with it so far." But yeah, it takes a bit of work, and like I said, it's a heck of a workout because it's pretty hard to grind, you know, plastic, ABS plastic or whatever this is, with a meat grinder. But that's, you know, that's what I do. Let's see here. Did you ever sell your Black Templars army? I asked, since you said in a previous video you don't sell models, you paint. Well, I really only ever painted 5 Black Templars, kind of like as a as like a test, you know. So I painted those guys, and I liked the way I wrote down my recipe of what I did here and all that kind of stuff, and got everything all figured out. And then when it was all done, I basically like started building all the rest of the forces, because there's all kinds of little specific bits that GW used to sell just for Black Templars, like all the special shoulder pads and all that jazz. So I just started building. I'm like, this is what it's going to look like painted when I'm done, so now I need to build the rest of the force. And then basically I fell off of the 40K bandwagon before I even got them all completely built. So I've sold most of my 40K stuff, but yeah, those 5 models, or maybe 6, are still down in the basement, and they're not, I don't, like I said, yeah, I don't sell stuff that I paint generally. Let's see here. So Skaven, is that my jam, or am I dabbling? So, like I said, with Age of Sigmar, Age of Sigmar is kind of designed so you can dabble. You know, you can drop. Like technically, there's no rules that say that you have to. You could have Empire guys and Chaos guys and Tomb King guys. Let's say you could have them all in the same team. There's nothing that says you can't. Now, to be fair, that's never been in the past. You could, if you're playing with your friends, you guys can just put together whatever the hell kind of armies you want. If you were going to play in a tournament, obviously there were different rules, but for this, it's the same type of deal. What the guys that I play with in my area do, we generally put we stick with one of the big 4 keywords. So you've got order, chaos, death, and destruction. So as long as everything in your army has one of those keywords in common, so like my stuff's all chaos, my friend Kevin, his stuff is all chaos, destruction. Sam, actually, my pro painter Sam, he's going to probably start playing soon, and he's mostly destruction because he's got orcs and goblins and jazz like that. And I've got another friend who's working on some Sigmarine stuff, but he'd be able to mix in Empire or Bretonnians or whatever, or elves or dwarves into with his Sigmarine guys. So yeah. All that kind of stuff, you kind of work together that way. Let's see. Do you put your hat on backwards when you want to hang out with the kids so they know how cool you are? No, I don't. I generally don't usually wear the hat backwards unless like it's getting in the way if I'm really close to something, I guess. But otherwise, I usually keep it like this. Let's see. How long will it take roughly to get a unit like that tabletop ready in terms of a project rather than hours invested? Ugh, that's a good question. These guys have a lot of little parts, and there's 20 of them. So between building and then eventually texturing the bases, and then priming, highlighting, and then painting, yeah, it can take a long time. That's one of the reasons why I kind of like smaller projects usually, where it's maybe 5 guys or maybe 10 or something like that tops. So this group of 20 is going to be tough. I may split it into 2 groups of 10 and do something a little bit in between. Just because just staring down the barrel of 20 figures, for me at least, that's tough. I find that difficult. Yeah, so let's see here. It would be interesting to know how you would compose a Black Templars list. Still have my army from 5th edition. I am not the dude to ask about how to make a 40K list anymore. I'm really not. I don't know much about the meta even anymore. Like, one of the reasons I kind of liked at the time when I was originally playing in 5th, one of the reasons that I liked the game, Black Templars, because there was a nice mixture between some long range stuff with a lot of las cannons and things like that, and then there was a lot of like guys who were getting up in your face and going close combat. And now I don't even know what the heck's going on anymore. I just watched a game recently where a guy had he had Eldar, and he had a inquisitorial like warband attached to them just so he could put down servo skulls. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like they would work together, but whatever, you know, that's how it goes. Let's see, what other things have we got to see here? Let's see. I'm working on a Malifaux crew at the moment, building the Thunderbox set. Never knew how fun Malifaux was until my friend ran a demo game. Malifaux is a super cool game. One of the things I like about it the most is the card mechanic. It is completely different than the dice mechanic. So, for those of you who don't know about Malifaux, Malifaux is a kind of steampunkish, vaguely maybe a little bit Western, but not necessarily. It's still kind of weird West, steampunk, a lot of things going on. And the trick is that you can, instead of using dice to do anything in the game, you have a deck of cards. And they sell a special deck of cards, but you could even use a regular poker deck or whatever, just as long as you know what everything means. And you have the 4 suits, and you have 13 cards per suit and all that jazz. So the trick is this. You take a hand of cards, and then when you want to do something, let's say you want to shoot this guy over here, you flip the top, you've got your hand, in your hand, but then you flip the top card off of your deck and you drop it down, and maybe you get a 8 of clubs or whatever. And your opponent, he throws down a 9 for his defense. So he beat you. You didn't get to hit him. Well, you have cards in your hand, and you can do something called cheating fate, where you can take a card and go, oh, okay, that 8 didn't do the job because you used a 9. Well, I've got an 11 or whatever, a jack or queen or whatever, and you can lay that down. And then he gets the chance to cheat your fate one time, and it goes back and forth that way. So it's kind of like, it's like a dice game, except that you have 6 or 7 or 5, whatever, dice results already in your hand that you know what they are, and then you can replace what you've just done. Plus, when you roll dice, you just keep getting dice, 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 dice. You don't know. With the deck of cards, there are only 4 11s in that deck. Whereas when you roll dice, there could be as many 1s as you might want. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. So it's an interesting system that way. It's got a really cool story. People who say all the time, oh, well, Games Workshop builds the best models in the world. In my mind, they haven't been looking at Weird Games and their Malifaux models. The plastics that are coming out of Malifaux for the last 2 years, maybe 3, are some of the most amazing models I've seen. Now, if you love to customize and change things up, it's a little bit more difficult. A lot of the Malifaux models are a lot like those single sprue hero models that Games Workshop is cranking out right now, where they only go together pretty much the one way, you know what I mean? But they're very dynamic and cool looking. They're not just a Space Marine holding a bolter or whatever. These Malifaux models are amazingly dynamic and crazy looking, but they kind of go together pretty much just one way. And they're still, like I said, they are some of the best plastic models out there. Games Workshop still makes a bunch of great stuff, don't get me wrong, but I really think that Malifaux is really starting to go towards eating their lunch a little bit. When Infinity moves into plastics, I think you're going to be really surprised by what you see coming out of them. Like, one of the reasons I'm not a big Infinity fan is because I kind of don't like metal models, but the plastics that are coming from what I hear are going to be astounding, so I'm really looking forward to that. Let's see here. What else have we got? This thing is weird. All right. Adam almost always replies. I probably won't actually get much in the way of clipping or cutting down because I'll probably just be answering questions, which I'm totally fine with. But I can show you stuff and we can go through and look at the models a little bit more if you want to at some point. I'm more of a collector and a painter than a player. I find myself spending a lot more time painting than I do playing, but it's cool because I enjoy painting. One of the things I love to do while I'm painting is either listen to podcasts or listen to audiobooks. So I feel like I'm getting 2 things done at once, kind of, which is, that's better than what I'm normally getting done at once. So yeah, let's see here. Have all the videos with Sam come out yet, or are you saving some? All the ones that we've currently filmed are out, but we will be shooting a couple more, possibly even as soon as next week, and then they will come out a little bit later. It's going to be an ongoing thing with Sam and I. He's a friend of mine. I've known him for years and years and years. We live about 20-25 minutes away from each other, so it's not a big deal for him to come down to the studio and for us to do some stuff. And I like working with him because he comes out with great content, and I get to kind of be behind the camera for a bit, which is sort of fun. Plus, it helps him out because he gets to, he's getting more exposure because his main job, like his job is he's a commissioned painter. That's what he does. That's not what he does on the side. That's his day job. So putting more into that, I think, works out really well. And so I'm a big fan of trying to help him out. And it's not even like it's not like I'm like doing him a favor. I'm just like, hey, we should work together because we live near each other and we like doing the same stuff. And he was like, yeah, totally. So we're going to do some stuff, I hope, too, at Adepticon. I've got some ideas because he knows a lot more of the painters than I do. Like, I know him and I know Tom Ailes, who are two amazing painters, but I know them mainly because I've played with them at shops and they live around here. But I don't know a lot of other pro painters and stuff like that. So at Adepticon, hopefully, I would like to, what I'm kind of wanting to do, and don't tell anybody, but what I kind of want to do is like come up with a list of questions that are aimed a little bit maybe more towards beginners, and then ask a bunch of pro painters all the same question, and then like almost as advice, and then get here's the question, and then see 4 or 5 different pro painters what their answer is, and make them short. I want them to be like 30-second answers. I don't want them to be going on for a long time, because I want it to be information that people on the channel can use, and it'll be cool. So that's one of the things, of the many things that I've got planned for Adepticon this year. Let's see here. Let's see. Malifaux seems sweet. I tried a demo game last week. Yeah, that's true. It's a cool game. What are your thoughts about Wrath of Kings? I'm thinking about giving it a shot. So Wrath of Kings, let's see here. Wrath of Kings is another kind of rank and flank type game like Fantasy was. Where the models all go in like a chunk, like a rectangular thing, and they move around that way. I know a lot of people have transitioned to Wrath of Kings from Fantasy, and I think that's great for Mantic, because Mantic is a bunch of cool people and they put out, I think, some good products. And I know that if you're into if you were into Fantasy, moving into Wrath of Kings for a lot of people was a relatively easy fit. And Mantic doesn't really care if you bring your GW models into, as far as I know, like, I suppose if there's a Mantic sponsored, what do you call it, a tournament, maybe they would have some problems with it, but I don't know that for sure. Maybe they wouldn't. I get the feeling they probably wouldn't, since they were kind of always making models with the idea that, well, you could use those in Fantasy if you wanted to. So if for them to then turn around and go, hey, you can't bring GW models, to our tournament, that'd be a little weird. But I don't know, honestly, the difference as far as like how that works with their tournaments. But I know Ronnie, who's the president, and we've talked a bunch at different conventions and things like that. I've interviewed him a bunch, and he's a good guy. And I'm glad to see that their business is really starting to grow with this kind of, a lot of people liking to shift, who still want to do the rank and flank thing. And Age of Sigmar is maybe not their bag. They've moved over to Kings of War. Honestly, as far as what kind of games people should, what kind of games you might want to get into, a big deal sometimes is, do you like the look of it? Do you like the lore of it? That kind of stuff. But it's also, do people in your area play it? Because it's a lot more uphill battle when nobody in your area plays this game, and then you're like, well, so how do I do it? With skirmish games, it's a bit easier because you can just take, you can build 2 small armies and then get people involved at your local shop. Go, here, use this army and we'll play against it and I'll show you how to do it. But with like a big army game like 40K or Kings of War, it's really difficult to crank out 2 armies and teach people how to play. So let's see here. The Malifaux starter set models are awesome to paint. Yeah, they're really cool. What are your thoughts on Wrath of Kings? I was thinking Kings of War when you asked that question. I'm sorry, I was answering about Kings of War. Wrath of Kings is also a cool game. That's made by Cool Mini or not. I read that backwards in my head. I'm considering trying it out as Goritsi. Goritsi is the like vampire and werewolf guys, I think. I went Hadros because I like fishmen, as many of you may have noticed in the past. They're a lot of fun to paint. I haven't finished them yet, but I've finished the first 12 Deep Men, which are the very simple units, and I like those guys. So it's a cool game. Again, it's one of those where you're going to have to find other people to play with and things like that. I know there's going to be tournaments and things like that at Adepticon, but I think that game is taking a little bit longer to grow. So what is it about the Skaven that appealed to you? I've been looking for an army to start Age of Sigmar, and I've been pulled in by the Skaven as well. Honestly, it's just because they're cool looking, in my opinion. And also because they will match very well with the Nurgle stuff that I've already got. So because this particular band, these plague monk dudes, are designed to have the Nurgle keyword, that's the whole trick. That's one of the reasons why I'm using them. My model came together. I'm a board gamer, so do you have to keep an eye on the rules when putting these together, or just throw together what looks cool? With Age of Sigmar, with Age of Sigmar, at least, you can kind of do what you want, and throw together whatever you want that looks cool. But with most miniatures games, there's usually kind of rules, and like you have to have one guy who's a boss and one guy who, these guys are troops and these guys are elites, and it depends on the game. But a lot of games have army, building type rules that you can go through. Will you ever do any battle reports? I am kind of working on it. I need to find the right type of format that I like. I think it's going to be a little bit of a mixture between the format where stuff happens and then you come back after the turn and say, okay, well, this is what happened in turn one. And it's going to be between that and, say, like the guys over at like Mini Wargaming. Mini Wargaming, they do... they show, like, in most of their games, like, every single movement, every single roll, all that stuff. And those videos can take, a couple hours sometimes. So I don't know that I want to go that direction. I think I want to go a little bit more towards this is what happened last turn, but maybe with some highlights, maybe with some, maybe if it's a lot of games, it's like my turn and then your turn. So maybe we'll show, opponent turn and then my turn and then opponent turn and my turn, and do the wrap-ups after that as opposed to after the entire turn. Something like that. Let's see here. We ever doing... Are they going into plastic? Infinity? That's what I've heard. And yeah, they've been a metal company for a long time, but from what I hear, they are going to be going into plastic eventually. It's expensive. It's very expensive to make the molds for plastic. So yeah, that's the trick. But from what I understand, the very first thing they're going to do, I think, is a starter box that's going to have both sides being plastic. So that's cool. Let's see here. I'd love it if there was some sort of gateway drug for 40k with less models and less rules, kind of like Age of Sigmar. I kind of think that their plan is that Age of Sigmar is the gateway, and then you move eventually into 40k. The problem for you and I, and the bonus for them, is then you need to buy all new models. Like, if they would have kept Fantasy and Age of Sigmar together, besides the fact that they just didn't have the resource to run both of those horses at once, from what I know of business, I get the feeling that then people might have been able to figure out a way to like have their Age of Sigmar forces then just immediately translate into Fantasy, and then you wouldn't have to buy new models. If you decide, hey, Age of Sigmar's cool, and you play that for a while, and then you see, these space guys are really cool, then you got to buy new space guys, unless you go with Chaos Demons, because technically Chaos Demons could be in Age of Sigmar. The models themselves work for Age of Sigmar and 40k. So I guess if you wanted to do it that way, you could do it that way, but otherwise, that's kind of the trick. Let's see here. Can you relook at wet palettes and different brands of them? I don't use a store-bought one. I kind of, I honestly just use like a Tupperware kind of thing, or a Gladware or whatever, and I use some paper towel and I use some baking parchment, like in the video. I know there are brands out there you can buy. I've never messed with them, but if I do, maybe I could do a review kind of thing of that. That'd be kind of cool. Let's see here. Wargamer Girl's format is brilliant, and that's talking about bat wraps again. She's really good at that. It seems time intensive, though. Yes, I have talked to her and her boyfriend, who does the majority, I think, of the editing, and those bat reps take a really long time to film. They take a really, really, really long time to edit because they put so much time into them, and because they do look so great and sound so great and have all kinds of extra graphics and stuff like that. The people at Mini Wargaming, they crank out tons and tons and tons of these battle reports, which is great, and they've got a great channel, and I know a lot of those guys. But they're looking at it from the aspect of like, we need to crank out this many per day or whatever, so they're constantly, so they don't necessarily put in tons of extra, they've got like an intro graphic and an outro graphic, but they don't put, like, she puts so much time, she and her boyfriend put so much time into those bat reps that she does. That's why they look so amazing, frankly. But yeah, it takes a long time, which is why she does like one a month, or maybe she's moved up a little bit faster than that. But yeah, But yeah, again, and then that particular game, War Machine, lends itself really well to that kind of stuff too, because there's so many competitive players. So yeah, it's she's cool. Striking Scorpion 82, he does battle reports. That's true. I've watched some of his too. They go, they can go kind of long. They're cool. It's interesting to see the differences in how like people overseas do terrain versus what you see kind of over here in America. That's kind of interesting as well. But yeah, it's cool stuff, but they use a lot more scatter, like flock and little rocks and things like that, which, I mean, over here I've never played in a battle where we've just spread around a bunch of stuff, because, like, how do you know? Am I in terrain or am I not in terrain? You know, that kind of stuff. You look at games like War Machine, where now most of the people who are playing War Machine tournaments, the terrain's all flat, like pieces of, like, mouse pad, you know what I mean? So that you're like, I'm either in or I'm not, you know, that kind of thing. To me, that's not as visually interesting, so that's another reason why I kind of don't play War Machine generally. Let's see here. He has great models and scenery. Oh yeah, I mean, this stuff looks like a diorama almost, you know, the board. But I look at it and go, I don't know how I'm going to stack guys on top of those rocks. You know, that's the way I kind of look at it sometimes. Let's see. This little chat window is junk. I'm not a big fan of it, frankly. Let's see. What are your thoughts on the new Horus Heresy game, Battle at Kelth, or whatever it's called? I haven't played it. I know a lot of people who bought it because they wanted plastic 40 or 30K models. A friend of mine got it, but he hasn't put it together or anything like that. I don't see myself getting it, but I do. I think it was a smart plan of Games Workshop, and they've been doing this more and more to sell a board game that comes with a bunch of models that they know you're going to probably use for something else. So instead of you just buying a box of models, you're probably going to buy the whole game, and you know, that kind of stuff. But you also might actually play the board game too. I've heard it's kind of cool, but I haven't played it. Tim Boddington says, I copied Adam's wet palette, and it's definitely up to the quality of my painting. Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad to hear it. I have a cat that is meowing. What? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but he's sad about something. Yeah, the paint palette, if you're not using a paint palette now, you should probably do that as soon as you can. It has upped my painting so much to be able to thin out your paints, but not have them dry out on the piece of plastic or whatever that you might have added water to them on. They stay nice and wet longer. It's just great. And like I said, you know, you don't have to go out and buy one if you don't want to. You can build one. Just watch the video and you'll see that information. I was actually taught that particular thing by Sam again. He showed me how to do it the first time, and I was like, well, damn, I'm gonna never not paint with this kind of thing either. Anyway, so let's see here. I copied Adam's. I have seen Tabletop Tactics, Christian Steinkohl. I have watched a little bit of his stuff. I'm not super competitive, so a lot of like because those guys are tournament players, and so I'm like, oh yeah, okay, you know, I see where they're going on that stuff, and it does look cool the way that they've done a lot of the things, but it's not, for me at least, you know, I watch and I'm like, I get confused because I'm not so much of a tournament player anymore. Let's see here. Esoteric Order of Gamers also does bat reps. Yeah, I have watched a bunch of his stuff. I subscribe to his channel, and I got to say that where he lives, like, because I think he's in New Zealand, but his house is amazing looking, and they recently did some bat reps like outside, like on the shore of the sea, and I was like, wow. I mean, I would think a lot of stuff would blow away, but it looked really cool. So, and then the lighting is really good too, I suppose. Let's see. Started my boxes. Also, oh, the Boxes app. Yeah, no, that's been working out for people, and I use it myself, and a lot of other people I've been seeing. I get a report or like a little blip on my phone every time that somebody's like, oh yeah, so and so signed up with your code or whatever, and so that's cool. Boxes was a neat app, and I use it. I especially use it for paints because I never remember, do I have this particular purple? But I take pictures of my paints now, and then I can look through on the app and go, oh yeah, check that out. So if you're interested, it's box.es. So it's like www.boxes. You could go there. Let's see here. What other questions? We've got a lot of questions going on here. This is cool. Don't put guys on the rocks. Well, yeah, no, it's true, but you know. Let's see here. I have to say I like War Machine as a game. That 40K, that I think War Machine needs to take a note from 40K on customization. Yeah, like 40K used to really, you could, you know, tweak your sergeants and put different weapons on and do all this stuff, and War Machine's always been pretty much the guys you build the way you build them. I think that's to make things a little bit more balanced and to make it easier for the designers to say, well, we know how these guys act because they really only have one build. Whereas if there was like a possibility of 12 different builds depending on flamers and plasma pistols and this and that and all that jazz, I think it becomes a bit more difficult to sort of try to, balance it, which 40K has really fixed by just not bothering to balance stuff as far as I can tell, and but still giving everybody points, so whatever. Excuse me, I was getting parched. Do I have any experience with Wild West Exodus? I got in on the Kickstarter, and I got the models, and they were really nice plastic models, and they looked cool. And then I didn't really know anybody around here who played it, so it sat and sat and sat. And then a guy that I know in Milwaukee said, "Hey, do you?" And then I sold it to him. That's basically what happened. So, like I said, the models, again, when people are talking about plastic models, I think other people are really stepping up, and those particular models I thought looked really good. So, that's it. But I have not played the game. I have not played even a demo, technically. Have I ever played Warhammer 40K Dawn of War, the video game, on the PC? Yes. I used to play that a long time ago, and I also played Dawn of War 2 a little bit, but I haven't played much in the way of video games these days because I've been mostly trying to paint and make these things kind of happen. Let's see here. What kind of war games are you thinking of doing bat reps for? Well, I was thinking about Age of Sigmar, for one, and I was also thinking about Frostgrave. If you guys remember Mordheim, which was a Games Workshop product, kind of a fantasy sort of little skirmish game that had like a campaign mode. If you guys ever played Mordheim, Frostgrave is to some degree kind of a spiritual successor to it, which I think fixes a bunch of the problems the original Mordheim had. And it's a cool game. It's put out by Osprey Games, and it's a relatively inexpensive book. Use whatever kind of models you want to some degree. I use it like a mixture of Reaper stuff and GW stuff and all kinds of just weird junk that I find, and I build. I've got 2 Wargravens built, and I need to paint them, and then I want to start doing Frostgrave bat reps too. And then maybe another game called This Is Not a Test, which is a post-apocalyptic skirmish game. This Is Not a Test is basically, if you've played Fallout, the video games, it's basically a miniatures game version of Fallout, but it's not like a licensed video or a miniatures game version of Fallout. But it uses a lot of the same ideas and tropes and all that kind of stuff. And it's a cool game as well. It's got neat mechanics. And again, I mean, they do sell some models, but you can also just use whatever models you want. If you look at the header on the top of the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, there's a picture up there, and it mentions new videos every Friday. The models that are in that photo are one of my This Is Not a Test war bands, my first one, and a lot of it's just a mixture of like some Malifaux figures and some just kit bashed Reaper stuff and a lot of stuff. Let's see here. What do you think of Mantic's Walking Dead miniature game on Kickstarter? I know that they're doing well with it, and I haven't tried a demo of it. I'm going to probably try a demo of it at Adepticon. I think the Kickstarter will probably be done by then, so I'm probably not going to jump on the Kickstarter. I probably will wait and see, and then maybe buy it like afterwards. I've read more of the comic than I have of watching the television show, and from what I understand, the license that they're basing it off of is the comic and not the television show, probably because it's a bit less expensive to get the license for the comic than it is for the television show, because the television show is so popular. But yeah, I think it's interesting, and people love zombies, so that's pretty cool. So yeah, I may take a look at that down the road. Xanatos Volkova. Thanks for the painting tips. I use your Krylon primers and a wet palette thanks to your videos. I will at some point get a sonic cleaner too. Your tips are very helpful. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, ultrasonic is awesome for stripping models that you might buy on eBay that are pro painted, which is to say garbage, and so you can repaint them yourself. And the wet palette, like I've said, is awesome. Krylon primers, I'm really super happy with those Krylon camouflage paints. They are great. I did that skeleton paint tutorial recently, and that was all about kind of using one of the tan Krylon camouflage colors as a base, or as a primer and a base. And I'm going to be doing one soon about Imperial Guard, because again, their colors match really well with these camouflage colors. And I think I might even do one about Tyranids too, because that bone color will be like good as a base to paint over. War General T, any updates on the t-shirts? Well, as a matter of fact, If you're interested, see what I did there? Isn't that kind of cool? The t-shirts, I've got about less than a week left. The t-shirts are limited edition, and I'm getting them screen printed here locally, and then I will be shipping them out. They are $15 American plus shipping. Shipping overseas, as I have said already, is stupidly expensive, and I blame the post office. But in America, shipping is about $5. So overseas, it's more, well, up to as high as $22, sadly. So, however, if you buy 3 shirts, they still don't bump up to the next level of shipping. So if you buy 2 or 3, then you could split. So if you and your friends want them, you watch the video if you want to, and you can kind of see that information. But yeah, so you can find information about the shirts. You can go to the store at bit.ly/tmshirt, bit.ly/tmshirt, and you can find that information over there. I think the sun's coming out. It's getting brighter in here. Anyway, so yeah, more general thanks on the t-shirts. They're doing okay, and I'm looking forward to, as of March 1st, Tuesday, March 1st, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, I'll be taking them offline because they will no longer, they're limited edition. I'm only making as many as people are ordering, so that it helps to save costs, and I'm not sitting on a big pile of shirts. So anyway, that's where we're at. Let's see here. Mordheim, one of the greatest GW games. A lot of people do love the Mordheim games, and that's one of the reasons why I like Frostgrave so much, because it gives me the same flavor. It's got that same campaign feel to it, where you can play, and then like your guys, some of them maybe die, some of them maybe just get hurt, you get stuff, and you can upgrade, and there's, it's got a little bit of a Dungeons and Dragons thing, because your wizard on each team, he can be, or she, can be upgraded from game to game, and you kind of level up and learn new spells and do stuff like that, and it's really cool. But it's still, it's basically a miniatures game. So let's see here. Have you bought or seen the Age of Sigmar Chaos Grand Alliance book? I think that my local store has a copy of it, but I haven't looked through it. I think it's shrink wrapped, so I couldn't look through it, and I haven't picked it up. I've thought about it. I bought the first hardcover book that they came out with, which has just got the artwork on the front, and I know there's the something or other of Gal Miraz that's also at my local store, and I might pick that up someday. But for right now, I'm kind of just enjoying using the scenarios and stuff that are in that first hardcover book, and we've been playing some of that stuff, and it's cool. Let's see here. Referring to Age of Sigmar, does the Seraphon faction appeal to you? I like the concept of Lizardmen, and if I was gonna eventually finish up my Chaos Army and then go a different direction, I might go that way, just because I think they'd be a really fun paint job. I mean, just all that, you got so much photo reference you could go and look at, and just be look at different weird lizards all over the planet Earth, and then just paint your guys to look like that, a lot of bright colors and stuff like that. It would be also very challenging for me, because I'm not generally a bright color painter. I'm usually a grungy, kind of darker painter. And so that would be kind of outside my comfort zone, so it might be interesting to try and go that direction, but we'd have to see. Let's see here. What type of sonic bath would you suggest? I've never been able to clean minis properly, and I've heard a lot about sonic cleaners. I just got a cheap ultrasonic cleaner at Harbor Freight here in America, which is a store that sells relatively inexpensive tools. And I just usually throw in this stuff called Super Clean, which is purple, and it usually works for me. Although if you watch that video recently about the pitfalls of stripping, that didn't work for me very well on those particular models. I don't know what that guy painted them with, but I could not strip that stuff. But I've stripped stuff since then that's worked pretty well with the purple Super Clean. Some people also like Simple Green, and they'll use that in an ultrasonic cleaner. I've had some people tell me that I should use 91% isopropyl alcohol, and so I might try that maybe later and just kind of do an update on that pitfalls of stripping video to see what kind of other stuff is there. Let's see. Did you remember Necromunda and Gorka Morka, or even Space Marine, the game, late 80s one? Necromunda and Gorka Morka, yes. I bought a copy of Necromunda still in the original shrink wrap at an auction at a gaming convention about longer than that, 6-7 years ago, and I bought it for $60, and it was still in the original shrink, and I'm like, there's got to be something wrong. And I looked at it, the box wasn't squished, and the shrink was all intact, and I sat on it for about 6 months, and then put it up on eBay and sold it for $250. So I haven't played Necromunda in a really long time, and I was just weighing back and forth. Am I gonna paint this? Am I gonna keep it and sell it on eBay? And eventually I sold it on eBay. But if they bring it back, seeing what they do with it, it'll be kind of cool. Gorka Morka, I've got some friends actually who played that not too long ago. Last year they were playing Gorka Morka like on Wednesday nights. And I thought about it. I even bought a used orc truck from a guy that I know for like $20, but I really haven't gone that far on it. So what's the best way to keep the crown of my brushes from gunking up? I'm already using the Master's brush cleaner and preserver. Brandon, I have to say I don't know. My brushes are generally all gunked up around the crown as well. Because I don't treat my brushes awesome because I generally use the inexpensive GW ones. But I'll talk to Sam about it, honestly, and maybe that's a video that we do in the future to kind of just go over like brush cleaning, because he uses like super fancy expensive brushes because he's a pro. But I'm assuming he must know how to take care of them better than I do. So that's a good potential video coming up. Tobin Manthorpe. Every now and then I feel like miniatures games are really just painting micro pictures on pieces of plastic so that we can push them around a table. Do I have a problem? I have to admit that if I was way more into the gaming and less into the painting, I would probably do something like HeroClix, because then I'd just take them out of the box and then just go. I would say that that's probably one of the reasons why Star Wars X-Wing is so popular, is because you just rip them out of the box and you're playing because they're already pre-painted. But for me, and for a lot of people, I think that I really think that it's a situation where you want to build and paint, and that's a big part of it. And then, yeah, you get to play. And then you see gamers that just push around completely unpainted models all the time because they just want to play, So, it depends. I like the craft of building and painting and doing all that stuff, and I also enjoy playing, but I'm not a competitive player. I like if I'm playing a game and I'm not having fun at it, then I don't want to play it. So I like to try to have fun with that stuff. Let's see here. Those trucks are horrible. Well, it was already built, so I didn't have to rebuild it. That was a benefit, because, yeah, that kit's a real pain in the rear, from what I understand. Ed Grizich? I can't really pronounce that name, but I appreciate it. And I know that I think that Ed bought a shirt. I recognize the last name, so thank you very much. Anyway, ethylene glycol is the key ingredient when choosing a stripping medium. Look for household degreasing products. They usually contain it. Yeah, and the purple stuff, Super Clean, is a degreaser. It says right on the thing. And it usually, like I said, works great, but in this particular situation in that video, whatever those bases, those models were primed with or based with, whatever weird spray, just did not want to come off. Let's see here. Xanatis Volkova says, I believe Games Workshop has announced reprints of some of their old games. Blood Bowl was first announced, but Necromunda is either highly expected or announced in that line. Yes. From what I understand, they're bringing back the specialist games, and they're probably going to be producing them, but I think it's going to be slow. I think we're going to see maybe one box a year, maybe two, but probably more like, oh, hey, this year it's Blood Bowl, and next year it's something else, and next year. So don't expect them to come out real fast and furious, I think. Let's see, Henry Anthony. What do you think of the new Warhammer 40k Deathwatch Overkill board game with the return of Tyranid cultists from the 90s? Okay, so the first tabletop miniatures type game that I ever played, and I've mentioned this in a bunch of videos, was Space Hulk. And this was back in the mid-90s. One of the things I liked most about Space Hulk, besides moving the guys on the little tiles and doing all that stuff, and the little figures, the Terminators, which were really tiny back then, and all the Gene Stealers, one of the things I loved about it while playing was going through that little black and white paper book in there and reading all the the fluff that was available and all that stuff. And it had lots of pictures of Gene Stealer cultists and that kind of stuff, especially because the friend of mine who owned the game at the time, he also had the Gene Stealer expansion, which had way more stuff and had cultists and all kinds of stuff. So I've always thought it was a really interesting idea, but there haven't really been great models or much of any models for it for years and years and years. People have done modifications and things like that, but so I'm in a situation now where I'm like, I don't have a use for it, but I'm really glad that people are going that direction, because it's a really kind of, I know a lot of people have been clamoring for, if I could just get some cultists. And I'm sure there's probably a data slate or something like that, or if there's not, they'll come out with one afterwards to actually sell more models. But I'm sure there's going to be some sort of data slate so that people can start adding, allies, Gene Stealer cult allies to their army, or whatever the deal might be. And so I think it's a smart idea on their part. So yeah. Let's see here. What's your opinion on the new Slayers? Many called them naked ass. I'm not a dwarf fan. You're talking about the Fire Slayers, the new dwarves that came out. I'm not a big dwarf fan, but I know people who like dwarves. They like them quite a bit. So, it's one of those situations where I'm kind of, if you know, there's plenty of, like, there's models in the Nurgle line, honestly, that I'm not a big fan of, like the Harbinger or the Bringers of Plague, the Nurglings. I don't like much of those little kind of cartoony looking guys. I like the guys that look more gross and kind of more serious and gritty. So and these guys kind of ride the line, these Plague Monks. But yeah, they kind of ride that line between there. Let's see here. Have you ever played Infinity by Corvus Belli, and what's your take on it? I have played a demo kind of once. I've got friends locally who are starting to get into it. I've watched bat reps. I still don't really understand it. It has a very high, steep learning curve. I own models. They're also all metal and lots and lots and lots and lots of little parts on some of them, and kind of difficult to build. So that's one of the reasons why I haven't, like, it's a neat concept. I like sci-fi. I like skirmish games. But there's so much behind trying to put them together, and then the rules are so difficult, in my mind at least, because I'm not a big competitive player. It may be someplace I go eventually, but currently I'm still kind of on the fence about it. So, Rick Ice says the Gene Stealer cult is the truth. So that's, I'm good that you're on board with those guys. Let's see here. Some of the data slates for Gene Stealers are being spoiled today. That makes sense, I guess, if there's going to be new data slates because of the new models that come out. I could get that. Let's see. Will the VOD end up viewable on YouTube? Don't have much time. Yeah. This should all, once this is done, from what I understand, it will then be all available on YouTube, so you could, watch it later on. That's totally cool. That's kind of the bonus to these, is that you kind of, like, one of the upsides to doing these is that I kind of don't have to edit it. If I get everything all set up and be able to do all the cool, transitions and do all this kind of neat stuff and flip back and forth between, this kind of thing and this kind of thing and do all of that, I don't have to edit that later. I can just do it now, and it's in there, and then I'm done, which is nice. So this is not the way all these videos are going to, or not the way all my videos are going to go. But my plan is that eventually I'm going to move this computer, which is currently in the dining room, by the way, down into the basement. I'm going to get some lighting that is not a potential fire hazard, like what I've got set up right now, and I'm going to get that stuff set up. And I want to do these probably once every 2 weeks. I'm thinking possibly Sunday mornings, because that will work best with my schedule and stuff like that, but we'll see how it goes. But this is, again, more of a test to kind of find out. Now that I have, because what I did is I just recently paid for the XSplit, which is the software I'm using here to do all of this shenanigans. This software I just bought, and so I wanted to make sure it was working properly, and that's why I'm kind of doing this. And also I've got some time this afternoon. I have to go to the dentist later, which I'm not really looking forward to. So, but yeah, that's part of my plan going forward in the future. So yeah, if you want to watch it later, that's cool. Let's see, Adam, do those Skaven come with banner and instrument options? They do. You can see here some. There's a banner here. There's another banner here. This is a gong, and there's also these bells, which they call chimes, which are also a potential. I got to get those in the shot there. So. There's the banner of contagion. There's the banner of, I'd have to look it up. If you look in the bat or the war scroll there, it explains all the stuff and all the parts that you need to come in here. Also, you've got all the woe stabs. There's a bunch of little extra rat dudes over here and all this kind of cool stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of things going. Oh, there's a big piece of weird stone. That's cool. So yeah, it's a great model set, and I'm looking forward to putting it together. Let's see here. Heinrich, hey Adam, just getting into Age of Sigmar and starting a Chaos army. What would you recommend for Chaos Knights, glaives, or hand weapons? Any ideas? I actually built Chaos Knights, so I do have some opinion about that. Glaives are cool. Hand weapons are cool too. Definitely you want to keep the shields, because those rune shields, I think if I remember correctly, on a 5 or 6, they block mortal wounds, which is a big deal. I believe I built mine, because I built them a long time ago and I haven't painted them yet, so they've been sitting in Ziploc baggies to keep them all separate. And I don't remember if I have glaives or if I have hand weapons, but I think that I have glaives. I'll double check and I'll do a video about it eventually or something, or I'll put it on social media and you'll see there. Yeah, they're neat models, and they're older models. The in comparison to the Varengard, they're very static because they were designed originally to kind of move in this rank and flank sort of situation. So the Varengard are not. So they're in mid gallop and they're hauling ass, and they're really cool looking. But I'm looking forward to being able to have those Chaos Knights set up as well. Let's see here. I'm going to be upgrading my paints soon. I think of getting a Reaper line or Vallejo Game Color series. I use Army Painter now, and there's just not a good variety of colors. What are your opinions on those brands? I use mainly Vallejo and Games Workshop. I have some Reaper paints, but it's mostly Vallejo and Games Workshop. I have some washes for Army Painter, but I've not used any of their standard paint line. Someone asked also about what kind of airbrush I use. I'm going to be doing a video soon about airbrushing because I've had a lot of people recently asking about it. I use a Iwata Eclipse HPCS, if I remember correctly, and it's a gravity-fed airbrush. One of the most important things for what we want to do, you want a gravity-feed airbrush, which if this is the airbrush, the cup is on the top. You do not want the kind where the cup is on the bottom and it has to suck up, because then you have to have your pressure much higher to make the siphon work. You want the gravity to pull the paint down into the brush, and then you can blow air through at a lower pounds per square inch, and then you don't splatter paint as much and that kind of stuff. But I'll go over a lot of that stuff eventually once I get that video. Have you heard of any depth or campaign rules for Age of Sigmar? I think in some of the books you definitely get a little bit of a campaign-y feel, and I know that there are people online who have been making their own kind of scenarios and doing that kind of stuff and adding campaign stuff to it, but I don't know if there's anything official, and like I said, I haven't read all of the big, thick, hardcovers that they've put out. I just don't currently, frankly, have the money to do that. So, you said you don't like goofy-looking models. What other models don't you like from other armies? Oh, gosh. I generally don't like any Eldar or Elf stuff the Games Workshop does, especially the Eldar. I'm sorry if you're a big Eldar fan, but Eldar, Dark Eldar in 40k, I just have never liked the pointy heads and all the spikes all over them, and just everything about the Eldar. Not only do I not like the look of the Eldar, I don't like generally the rules, because they're always, when I used to still play 40k, they're pretty damn tough, so that's a problem. Yeah, I don't know. I would never probably play Eldar because it's just not my personal aesthetic. I'm not saying that they're badly done models. If that's what you like them. Everybody likes things that are differently. But for me, my opinion, I'm not a big fan of the look. If there were an Uncle Adam character model, what game and army would it be in? Oh, gosh. That's a good question, Gazinger. Gosh, I don't know, man. Wow, yeah, I'll have to think about that, actually. And maybe I could get somebody to make a model. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know if it would be sci-fi or fantasy. That's a very good question. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. Let's see here. Graham Rainey. Hey, Adam, I just want to say, along with the mini Wargaming guys, your channel is one of the most entertaining and enjoyable channels. I like a lot of your ideas, and the presentation is cool. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I like to... I've said this before, I got into doing these videos because I wanted to learn more about video production. And I've always had a strong belief that if you want to learn a new skill, apply it to a hobby. So just like when you're a little kid and you're in art class and they give you crayons and they give you paper and they're like, okay, now draw something. And then you're like, I don't know what to draw. I was sitting here thinking about doing videos, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do videos about? And I thought, well, why don't I just do videos about tabletop wargaming, because that's what I enjoy doing. And so it went from there, frankly. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing it, and I enjoy doing it, and it's a lot of fun. And doing new stuff like this live stuff, I think is really cool. I love being able to take these questions and kind of go that direction and chat and whatnot. So I do not know much English, so the text turns out bad within the meaning of. I think I might have missed something here. Let me back up a little bit. Sorry, I did not have time to start. Hi, Dimitri. I got that much. The rest of it. Good luck. Thank you very much, though, for stopping in. I'm assuming you're probably not from my neck of the woods, so it's cool, again, to be able to communicate with people who could be thousands. I was going to say millions, but that's probably not true, but at least thousands of miles away, and so that's a lot of fun. Also, totally with you on the goofy models, but I tend to think that some models look better with a good paint job. I say all models look better with a good paint job. A good example is the Wolfen models. The official paint job was no good, but darker schemes make them work. You know, I have noticed recently that Games Workshop's paint jobs, especially on some of their newer models, is becoming a little hit and miss. Like, they always used to be the gold standard. Like, you would see these things on the, in the magazine, like in White Dwarf and things like that, and look at them and go, Jesus, that is astounding. That is really good. And now sometimes I see some of these models, in the photography that they do for the boxes, and I'm like, I know guys who can paint way better than that. You know what I mean? And it's just, I'm not saying I can paint better than that. Don't get me wrong. But there's times when I can look at it and go, that's not as good as I would have thought it would be from, Games Workshop being one of the best in the world or whatever. So, yeah. Let's see. Andrew Wheatley, your video convinced me to finish my vampire counts, Deathlords and Friends, and play a game of Age of Sigmar, and now I have a weekly game set up in my local game shop. Thank you for the quality content. Well, thank you for the comment, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's I think that, and I know a lot of people who and it makes sense, a lot of the veterans for fantasy were not happy with the change, and I get that. But the trick is that I think that it has brought a lot of, and I've been seeing it in the comments, on that Age of Sigmar video, which has been very popular. But a lot of people are like, oh, I haven't played for years, or I've never played, or I've always thought it was cool, but I don't know. And then now they're playing because of Age of Sigmar. So I'm glad that I helped at least Andrew here to be able to kind of go forward and to do some of that stuff. That's really cool, and I like hearing that stuff. Have you seen the ocean boards from Terranscapes? What do you think of them? I've seen, I think I subscribe to the Terranscapes YouTube channel. I don't know if that's the same people you're talking about. I haven't seen the ocean boards, I don't think, lately, so I might not have seen what you're talking about there. Hi from Zircon12. Okay, so maybe some of the viewers are from millions of miles away, but I get the feeling that Tobin might be pulling my leg. I'm just saying. Gareth says hi from England. That's not even close to where I am. That's way over. That way's east. That's back that way. All right. Let's see. That's it for me. Have fun. Okay. Well, thank you very much for stopping by, Xanatos Volkava, and thanks for the questions. Sebastian is currently watching from Kuwait. Wow, that's pretty cool. Let's see here. Speaking of vampire counts, what is your take on the supersized models such as Nagash and the Imperial Knights? If there wasn't so much stuff like right here, like there's a light here that's blocking, see I can block that, and there's a light here that's attached to this camera and all that stuff, I could just reach over to that table and pick up Glotkin in the box. He hasn't been built yet. So the Glotkin model, for those of you, he's a Nurgle guy. He's probably nearly a foot tall. Well, maybe not that big, maybe 10 inches. I'm really looking forward to painting him. I think that the big models are cool. They are a little daunting as far as painting and building and all that kind of stuff, but I think they're cool. And I think the Games Workshop wants to go in that direction a little bit more. Obviously, you've seen it in 40K with the Imperial Knights, like you mentioned. You're seeing it in Age of Sigmar with Nagash, Glotkin, a lot of different models. I can't even think of any other big ones right now off the top of my head. But yeah, so in those situations, I think that, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how those kind of affect the game. With Age of Sigmar, I don't know if there'll be a huge effect long term, but with 40K, they've had to change the rules from what I understand on Imperial Knights a couple of times. I mean, they put out 2 different codices for that book, like 16 months apart. Like, there was the first one that came out when the first models came out, and then another book came out like 16 months later, and I was like, that's weird. I almost pulled the trigger, honestly, on getting back into 40K, and I was going to go Grey Knights and Imperial Knights, because I'm like, I could literally build an 1850 list on less than 20 models. Admittedly, 3 of them would be $110 models, and they would be big, but, it wouldn't be as big of a deal to paint. And then when I saw that they'd already changed the book and all that stuff, I was like, ah, Christ. And then I didn't go into it. And now Age of Sigmar came out, and so I'm like, got something else to still focus on. That's Games Workshop. And it's not that things have to be focused on in Games Workshop. I'm not like a fanboy. People have called me that, but I'm not. Like I said, I got rid of all my 40K stuff. But one of the benefits to a big game company like this is the fact that when you go into a shop, it is more likely you will be able to find a game. to play with somebody else there if you play one of the bigger games. It's like if you go into a shop and you pull out a small game that's independently produced and say, hey, does anybody else here play this game? You're going to hear crickets generally. So that's why in those situations I like to be able to bring two armies and goes, does somebody want to try this game out? And then you show it to them, and then you get a game, and maybe they eventually start playing it themselves, and you grow the community, or maybe they don't, and that's fine too, whichever. But yeah, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how Age of Sigmar works and how it starts to spread out some more. It's going to be interesting to see my personal belief, and you can write this down and let me know when I'm wrong, totally. But also, I'll let you know when I'm right. I have a suspicion that 8th edition 40k is coming out this summer because 7th edition came out 2 years ago, and Age of Sigmar came out last summer. And I think they're going to start leapfrogging. It'll be this, and then it'll be every 2 years so that they have a new big thing coming out every summer. And I have a suspicion, unless maybe it's a big launch of a bunch of specialist game stuff this summer, I have a suspicion that 8th edition 40k is going to come out this summer. And then you will hear some gnashing of teeth from a lot of people, because it used to be 5 or more years in between editions, and I think that they're ramping that up. So I very possibly might be wrong. I kind of hope I'm wrong, but I might not be wrong. So you heard it here potentially first. Let me see. What else have we got here? Hi from England, currently watching from Kuwait. Clicky clicky. Let's see. Hello from Scotland. Well, hello, Jared. To me, Warhammer Fantasy was always pushing around shoebox lids, never had any appeal until Age of Sigmar. Honestly, yeah, I've never been a rank and flank fan. Like pushing around those blocks, that's just, for whatever reason for me, it was never a thing. And people out there really enjoyed it, and that's what they enjoyed, but that wasn't a draw for me. When I would look at the models and go, wow, these fantasy models are really cool, and then I would watch a game and be like, I don't really like that game style. One of the reasons why I probably haven't moved into Kings of War, but I'm glad that it's out there for people who still like that style of game. So yeah, if you don't like pushing around those big lids full of models, then yeah, Age of Sigmar is a good thing. Somebody typed a whole bunch of stuff in Russian. I'm going to say thank you. I'm not sure. I can't read it. What prices to Warhammer in your countries? I don't know. I know that they're really expensive in Australia, which is a real bummer for our Australian friends. I've heard that they're a little bit more expensive in America than they are in the UK, which I guess kind of makes sense. Heinrich has to go. Greetings from Germany, and we'll see you later, Heinrich. Let's see here. What is your opinion on painting tactics? Do you paint one model at a time, or do you paint an example, all the skin color? Oh, yes, this is a good question, Thanatorian. I am a assembly line painter from way back. That's, in my opinion, the best way, especially when you're building like a group of models that's going to be pretty substantial. One of the reasons I want to break these guys into groups of 10 is because I'm going to stick them to paint sticks. If you've watched the video I did a little while back about how to use paint sticks, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to not glue them. I'm going to use the poster putty from last week's video, and I'm going to stick them to paint sticks, maybe 3 or 4 across. Paint sticks are those sticks they give you at the paint store that you stir the paint with, the wooden ones. So you could use whatever you want, but that's what I use because they kind of have a handle, which is nice. So I'm going to stick them on there and then prime them all and then airbrush and highlight and then paint. And I like to go exactly like that. I like to go, okay, now I'm doing everybody's sword. Then I paint a sword, paint a sword, paint a sword, paint a sword, next stick, paint a sword, paint a sword, paint a sword. And then by that time, the first one's done, like dried, so I can go on to the next step. It allows you to crank through things quicker. Now, when you're working on a skirmish type game, let's say like Malifaux, where everybody in the game kind of has their own look and they're not like wearing matching outfits and stuff like that, then you kind of hop around, but it's still good to do them. Like if you just work on one model and you paint and then you have to wait for it to dry, if you don't use a hair dryer to, completely like speed along that process, you spend a lot of time just waiting for paint to dry, which, as we all know, is not necessarily that fun. So what you do is you maybe do some pink on this guy's, hands, and then you work over here and you paint this guy's gun, and then you work over here, and then by the time you get back to this guy again, he's done, or you dry, so that you can do the next step. If you just paint one at a time, it's going to slow you down. If you're just learning, it's not a bad idea, but I like to just kind of go, along and just assembly line it, because I think it's quicker and it keeps me more engaged. Thanks for the question on that. Hello from Iceland. That's pretty cool. My wife and I thought about going to Iceland for our honeymoon like 11 years ago, but we didn't pull the trigger. Let's see here. Is there a list of round base sizes for Skaven anywhere? Honestly, from what I understand of Age of Sigmar, the bases don't matter. If you wanted to put bigger bases on your Skaven than you think you might need to, because you just want to make the bases look cooler, there's technically no rules about that. If you read in the 4-page rule booklet for Age of Sigmar, it is a situation now where the bases don't matter, so use whatever you want. Some people are still using their square bases because they had guys painted up from before. I'm having all my bases round because I didn't have guys before, so I didn't really have any square stuff. I did buy a model on eBay that was already built and primed, and it was on a rectangular base, which I just basically cut off and then stuck it onto an oval base because I just like the look of it better. But it hadn't been textured yet, so it wasn't that big of a loss. It was a Mutalith Vortex Beast. If you follow me on like Instagram, I think there was a picture of it just like last week. So yeah, that was a new base that I kind of worked on. Greetings from Lithuania. Really enjoying your videos. Just started painting my first miniatures ever. Well, thank you very much. Like I said before, just earlier in the video today, one of the reasons I like it is because I can sit and I can listen to a podcast, or I can listen to an audiobook and paint at the same time. And I don't know, I feel like I'm being a little bit more industrious when I do that. Or I could be listening to, I could be watching. I can't really watch like Netflix or something like that. I know a lot of people who watch Netflix while they're painting, but then I just assume that they're listening to Netflix. I know a lot of people just listen to my videos while they're painting, and they don't necessarily watch, which is fine. But for me, if I'm watching something, I kind of keep invested on it, which is why a podcast or an audio book, for me, I can, be doing something here and painting and working on whatever, building, and then, kind of be listening, and I can be multitasking pretty well. Let's see here. My Agrellan Earth doesn't seem to crack properly. I am likely putting on too little. Stupid hipster. Yes, from what I understand, and I actually just watched a video yesterday from Janine, who is doing videos on and off for Mini Wargaming. She just did a video, I want to say it was yesterday or the day before, about Agrellan Earth. And she showed in her video, the thicker you put it on, the more likely you will get cracks, and bigger cracks. So yeah, you do have to really glob it on, and it has to be much more globbed on than you would think. And then you have to let it dry for a really long time, like overnight or longer, and then it will do a really decent job of cracking. And it's the same for the Mars kind of red one. Yeah, you have to really put it on there. I know a couple other people are saying, Thomas Wakefield saying, yeah, more tech paint is better. You have to put it on there to make it do its thing. Let's see here. Hello from Canada. Hello. What else have we got going on here? There's a bunch more Russian, which I'm afraid I can't read. Sorry. Do I play pen and paper games? The very first games that I really ever played that weren't like board games, like Sorry or Monopoly or whatever. The very first games that we would think of games that I ever played was Dungeons and Dragons back in like the 5th grade. So I started out in role-playing games, but I have not played role-playing games in probably, I would say, nearly 10 years. Like for a while we had a group and we were playing a little bit here and there, and then we kind of stopped, and I haven't played. My wife plays Shadowrun from time to time with a group, but otherwise I haven't. I for whatever reason, I seem to be more focused on like the craft of building these guys and doing this kind of stuff, and that's part of it. Left for Toast. When are you going to start on these guys? Well, that's a very good question. I have been answering a lot of questions, which I appreciate and I enjoy. But yeah, I haven't. I do have my clippers in my hand now, so it's like I'm nearly about to start clipping. Let's just say that. You will probably have to put a lot of more tech paint on than you would think. It also actually takes a long time to dry and crack. That's exactly right. It takes more, like sometimes as much as a day, and you do have to glop it on to make it actually work. I love the aesthetics of Malifaux, but do not know much about the gameplay. How easy is it to get started, cost-wise and rules-wise? The book, if you get the main big thick book, it's maybe $40 American, but they also sell a smaller version, which I think is like 15 or 20. A deck of cards, like I said, you can use a normal deck of cards that you might already have lying around the house. If you want to buy one of their decks of cards, they're like $8 or $9. Most of the crew boxes, which is a good starter, are generally between $40 and $50 American. So honestly, if you were to buy the deck of cards, a box, and the main big thick book, you're probably spending less than $100 and you're rolling in that game. So, I mean, obviously, if you don't have paints or glues or clippers or anything like that, you've got other expenses. But if you're already a person who's into some modeling, you probably have a lot of that stuff. So, yeah, that's probably, in my mind, one of the best ways to go. I mean, you know, if you're looking to getting into something like that, that game is really relatively inexpensive to get into. There are games that are cheaper to get into. Wrath of Kings is cheaper because you can download the rules completely for free, and I don't know if you can do that with Malifaux, but yeah. So those are some different options there. Let's see here. Sorry that I could not stay on my watch. I'm sorry that I could not stay on my watch. And okay, well, thanks, Dimitri. I appreciate it. Only an hour and 20 minutes in, and you're thinking about cutting some off. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. See, yeah, if everyone quiets down, I don't actually want you to quiet down. It's fine. Do you have any special tips and tricks when you are painting rust on swords and armor? I'm painting my ogre army for Age of Sigmar and want some rust on my miniatures. Yes. What I normally do, and I'm going to clip a little bit while I talk. What I normally do is I will generally take... it's difficult actually to talk and clip at the same time, I'm finding. I will normally paint a dark silver. So in Games Workshop terms, bolt gun metal. I don't even know what they call that anymore. They've changed the name again. So a darker silver. So I'll paint a darker metallic because I'm not really into non-metallic metals. If you don't know what that is, look it up. They're confusing to me. So yeah, I will normally do that, and then I will usually throw a dark brown wash over it. Again, in Games Workshop terms, I would be saying probably like a what is that? Agrax Earthshade. Okay, so now you've got a darker silver. You've gone over it with some brown wash, and then I will usually go back and maybe speckle some brighter silver, like a mithril silver, just along the edges to look like he's recently hit something with it, and it's like chipped away the oxidization, if that's even a thing. If you want to make it rusty, you could add a little bit of orange wash to it, or you could technically even go with a little bluish green, like a patina, but I don't know how well that might work from the aspect of, like, I don't know, I mean, like, patina should be more on copper, and I don't generally, were many weapons made out of copper? I don't know. I've done that with my Putrid Blight Kings. I made some of their weapons had some of that kind of verdigris, kind of blue-greeny kind of wash on it, and it worked out well. But honestly, yeah, just like a dark, you know, some people talk about, the typhus corrosion and then dry brush with Rizza Rust. If you really want it to look rusty, you could go that direction. You know, that's a potential. Why have you picked Plague Monks? Because I wanted more Skaven in my army. My army is predominantly Nurgle-y, kind of chaos-based, and these guys have the Nurgle keywords, so they will work well. The synergies, as people like to call them, the synergies will work well together with the chaos. So that's why I picked the Plague Monks. Plus, they look kind of cool with their little dirty, plague robes and stuff like that. Like you can see, they're like kind of bumpy and sort of beat up along the edges and things like that. And I'm probably going to go back on some of them with a little bit of liquid green stuff and just sort of dab it on there to make them look even a little grungy. I also might use some Typhus Corrosion because that Typhus Corrosion stuff from Games Workshop has some grunge like in the bottle. So you've kind of got that built-in sort of texture in there, and then you can go back and dry brush it and it'll look cool. I need to find more dudes. No, here we go. Just going to grab this whole stack and put the weapons on the bottom for now. All right, let's see here. How come I've never seen you and Spider-Man in the same room? I'm afraid I can't speak to that. That's top secret. Can't wait till you drop those Age of Sigmar battle reports. Keep up the videos. Yeah, it is something I would definitely want to do, and I'd like to. Like I said, I've still got to get some stuff figured out. I've got to figure out where I'm going to do them. I want to do them downstairs in the basement, in the nerd bunker, as I like to call it. I have a table built, but I just need to kind of get some things figured out, some lighting and stuff like that. I'm going to maybe potentially be able to do one at Adepticon. I'm really looking forward to Adepticon this year, and I might be able to do even one there. We'll see. Technical difficulties may occur, but we'll see how that goes. Out of curiosity, is there a particular color you find yourself using regularly? Doing a lot of the Nurgle stuff that I've been doing lately, I have been focusing a little bit more on... I use a color called Dead Flesh, which I believe is a Vallejo game color, and I use that as a dry brush on a lot of the Nurgly guys. I'll go with like a darker green, not a dark green, but like a little bit darker green, throw a brown wash in it, and I'll go back and highlight or dry brush with Dead Flesh, and I just picked that color up, I think, at Gen Con this year, and I really like it. So I've been using that a lot for Nurgly stuff. It helps out a lot. Thomas Wakefield, will you post this as a regular video later? Yes. Automatically, it should end up in my stream of videos like the other live ones have in the past. So yeah, if you got to go and you want to come back later and watch it or whatever, yeah, this will totally be there. Let's see. Have you tried Hero Quest? I found my old box in the attic. Fun game, kind of like D&D and Warhammer Fantasy combined, if I remember correct. I never played the original. I've got a lot of friends who talk very fondly about it, but I've never played the original. Or rather, is there a color you absolutely avoid? Like, say, with John Blanche, he hits red a lot, and very rarely do you see blue. Yeah, I like his artwork quite a bit, the stuff that he used to do, and I like a lot of the conversions I've seen him do, that they started putting into the White Dwarf when I used to still kind of get it once in a while. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, in general, I have a tendency to go a little bit more towards warm colors than cool colors. So maybe there's that, I guess. Yeah. Is there a particular artist that you find particularly inspiring? As a person who's got a strong background in photography, one of my favorite photographer is a guy named Gregory Crewdson. It's C-R-E-W-D as in dog, S-O-N, Gregory Crewdson. If you look him up on Google or whatever, you will see some amazing imagery. He likes to make a photograph, but he spends the amount of time on it that you would generally spend for a scene in a Hollywood movie. He's got, tons of lighting, and he makes these look like screenshots from movies, like single scenes, but that's his photo. And they're really cool. He's one of my favorites. New to the channel, glad I found you. I'm glad that you found us. Yeah, it's I do a lot of different videos. These live videos are not standard, but I'm going to be trying to make them a little bit more standard, but otherwise I put out new videos every Friday morning. So yeah, you can go back and take a look. I've been doing it for 3 years now. Actually, it'll be 3 years coming up March 1st. So the day that the t-shirts, I'm going to do this real quick. Ta-da-da. The day that the t-shirts are done, the limited edition t-shirts will be done March 1st, 2 p.m. Central Time. You can follow the link there, bit.ly/TM shirt, and you could buy one if you wanted to help support the channel and to show people how you roll. But that day will actually be the 3-year anniversary to the start of the channel. So, just FYI. Have I tried Frostgrave? Yes. And like I said a little bit earlier, I do plan on doing some battle reports for Frostgrave. I have currently built, but not yet painted, 2 warbands for that game, and then I will be playing with some lucky person who will get to use my other warband, unless they already have their own, which I guess is possible. And then we will be playing it. I want to do some bat reps, because I think it's a great game. If you've played anything like Mordheim in the past, or heard about Mordheim fondly, and you really are like, yeah, I definitely want to get together and play that, or try it out, and you can't really find Mordheim very well anymore, I think that Frostgrave is a very good successor to that game, and in my opinion, they've actually fixed some things that were a bit broken in Mordheim. So it's a cool game, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Do you think the way in which they photograph minis in White Dwarf has suffered over the years? I often find I dislike models I see first in there, but then I love them when I see them in firsthand. Ugh, that's a good question. I think the photography skills have gone up. Like the because they've started putting a lot more photos of big, huge fields of models, both in White Dwarf, in a lot of the books and things like that. So they've done a lot of work to make those really look kind of cool. The actual like type of photos that they're putting like on the front of the box, yeah, I will admit some of them are not great. These are okay. This group of guys here, I think, turned out. That's a nice looking picture, which you can kind of barely see. But I would say that probably a lot of, I have seen some of them where I'm just like, I don't know about that model. And you see it later and you're like, oh, that's actually not half bad. So yeah, I don't know what that's weird about. I don't know. It's odd. Isn't Mordheim coming back? In theory, yes. They have said they're bringing back specialist games, and they've mentioned Mordheim. But like I said earlier, I don't know how quickly. The belief is that Blood Bowl is going to be the first one to come out, and that's very possibly the case. But gosh, it's going to be a long, potentially very long time until that's the case. Because if Blood Bowl comes out, and that's the 1 year, and then the next year we do Necromunda, and then it'll go from there. I mean, it could take a very long time before we actually see that Mordheim come out. So, let's see here. Let's see. Tabletop Banter. That is some cap. Love your channel, and I wondered how long each video takes you to produce. Well, thank you. I'm glad you like the cap. How long does it take videos to produce? Well, normally the actual filming, let's say it's a 10-minute video, I don't usually take much longer than maybe half an hour tops to film, and that's just getting lights set up because they're kind of already set up, getting things like that taken care of and figured out, and then from there it's really honestly just kind of you get things kind of taken care of and you get it all set up and you shoot, and then you go from there and you go back. Then I go back home and I take a card like this one over here. I take these cards that have got my information in it, and I plug them into my computer. I do the audio and the video separately, and I take that stuff and I put it into a program that is called. I right now use Sony Vegas Movie Studio, and I do all my editing in that, and I sync up the audio to the sound, and I do all my editing, and I put in my overlays and all that stuff. And so the actual editing for a 10-minute video, if there's a lot of different overlays and if it's a 2-camera thing and all that stuff, it can take 4 hours, maybe more sometimes, to do the actual editing. It depends. Some videos where I basically just sit in front of the camera and talk and like give an opinion or talk, what some people refer to as the philosophical videos as opposed to tutorials. Those are generally a bit easier because it's usually one camera, maybe some overlay, and then you just kind of go from there and it works out. But the ones, especially the tutorials with multiple cameras, getting all that stuff synced up and everything takes a good deal longer. So, yeah. Korheim and Weird Wars are nice modifications of the Mordheim system. I haven't heard of Weird Wars, but I have heard of Korheim. A couple of years ago, some friends of mine and I were thinking about getting back into Mordheim, and we looked into alternatives because, from what I understand, like I said, Mordheim has got some issues. The original Mordheim, like there are certain warbands that are just much more powerful than others, and there's weird little rules here and there and all that kind of stuff. So. Yeah, that's I have not but I haven't heard of Weirdstone. What the heck is it called? Weird Wars. Thank you, Weird Wars. I haven't heard of that one. This is difficult to cut. That's a strange little. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and have to fix all that stuff and shave all that junk off. Am I getting the new Gene Stealer cult models? Probably not. So I'm not really playing 40k anymore. I guess if there was a potential, like if they just put them out like in a box, and I really just wanted to paint them for fun, or maybe use them in some other game, like maybe they could be mutants in This Is Not a Test. That might be actually cool. If I could find them and not have to buy the whole Deathwatch game and just find those models, I might, because they could be used in that. But otherwise, I don't know about the actual game itself. Working on my Imperial Fists while listening to your stream. Greetings from Germany to my favorite Wargaming channel. Keep it up. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And hello. Big fan of your channel. How meticulous do you usually get with cleaning the mold lines? I am kind of a dork about it, frankly, because I want them to be very smooth. What I normally do, and let's see if I can get this in you. I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not very well. like these mold lines, because there was a clip right here where I had to clip it off the sprue, what I will normally do is start out and I will kind of shave it with the X-Acto. Always make sure to shave directly towards your flesh. That probably is not actually what you should be doing, but that's what I have a tendency to do. So don't do as I do, let's say that. So yeah, I will try to get the big chunks off with the edge like that, like just cutting, okay? Now, I will then start to take the actual blade, which again is not in focus. No. So then I will then scrape, instead of cutting, I am now scraping side to side to kind of get that actual mold line. I don't know if you can hear the noise that it makes, but that's what's happening when you're scraping the flat of the blade. And I don't mean the back. I mean, some people will use the back. I use the actual blade itself, which maybe makes you go through blades a little bit quicker, but, you know, I mean, they're not super expensive, frankly. And I think it works a little faster. So, now you can still see that there, but if you run your fingernail over it and you can't really feel it, then it's not going to show up once you paint it. That's kind of the trick. Anytime you see something and you're like, is that going to be a problem when I paint it? If you rub the edge of your fingernail across it and you can't feel it, then you probably won't see it once it's painted because the paint will cover it, even though it may be a blemish in the plastic. If you can feel it with your fingernail, then just keep scraping until you can't anymore. Another thing you can use are these things. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of bright. This is a like an emery board. These are made by Flexfile, and they're foamy. There's like foam in between, so there's a little squishy. So you can, and they come in different. This is a coarse one, I think, but I've got fine ones, coarse ones, medium ones, all that kind of stuff. And you just sort of like rub stuff along here, and you know, just go like that, and help it to kind of rough it up a little bit, and to get, again, you try to make it so that when you rub your fingernail, your thumbnail, whatever, across that mold line, if you can't feel it anymore, then it won't show up in paint. So that helps. Do you ever do any sculpts? And what are the current game sizes for figures for RPGs? I am fairly new to gaming. I don't do any sculpting. I don't really have that skill. I can sometimes do a little bit of green stuff to add things to sculpts, but I don't generally do any sculpts. I can sometimes repurpose, like I can take this arm and move it, and you know, kit bash is what they call that, but generally no. Let's see here. Current game sizes for figures for RPGs. Most RPGs are about the same figure size as these types of games are, and they're what you would call 28 millimeter. These little rat guys are a little bit smaller because they're rat guys, but a normal Games Workshop, like a Space Marine or a Imperial Guardsman or whatever, from the eyes to the bottom of the feet is supposed to be about 28 millimeter. That's kind of the idea there. Let's see. Also, would you recommend learning how to make conversions, and what sort of things are useful there? Green stuff is very useful, and I don't mean liquid green stuff from the video that I did. I mean the actual two-part putty where you've got like a yellow and a blue, and you squish it together, and then you turn it green, and then it's very sticky. It's an epoxy putty from what I understand. It's sticky, and then you kind of sculpt it, but once it's completely cured and dried, it's very hard. And so you can go back and use a file, like something like this. You can use, and you can kind of grind things away and make it a little bit smoother. That's generally the big go-to when you're making conversions is stuff like green stuff. Other people will use things like Milliput, Fimo clay maybe, but yeah, I'm more of a fan generally of green stuff. If you've heard of the Heralds of Ruin rules for Kill Team Skirmish games, which I have, they are excellent. A lot of work has been gone to balance the different factions. I would highly recommend it, not affiliated in any way. Yeah, I actually have played Heralds of Ruin. When I first heard about it, I thought, okay, well, that sounds kind of cool. I could keep some of my 40k miniatures, maybe play that. And I played against a friend of mine who mostly was Eldar, and I still got stomped pretty hard. And I think it's great they're doing that. I think it can be a great... I think because that rule set, like Games Workshop does their own kill team. Games Workshop's kill team I don't think is quite as good as Herald of Ruin's kill team from what because I've read both of them. My only concern with the Heralds of Ruin kill team is that they called it kill team, which at some point may draw the ire of Games Workshop's bat-winged lawyers, and then they may be sort of screwed. Even though they're giving it away for free, they're not making any money off of it. That doesn't mean necessarily that there might not be some sort of copyright issue in the future. So, you know, what they could have done is maybe named it something a little different and then just referred to it, as a successor to Kill Team or something like that to kind of get the keyword. But I get what they're doing. Yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. So, but if you're looking to get into that, or if you're looking to just play games with much smaller armies, like literally 6 to 8 figures, the Heralds of Ruin Kill Team rules, you should go look it up. It's all free to download. You need to have, that's the trick, is you need to have like a Games Workshop book, or you need to have the codex or something like that. You need to have the rules, and then they have the modifications. I think that's the only reason they're not getting sued, is because it's not like a completely separate game. It's like modifications to a game to some degree. So, yeah. Is the Hobbit game dying? I get the feeling, yeah, probably, because the Hobbit, like, they're not going to make any more of the movies, so eventually that license is going to kind of dial down. I don't know anybody who plays this stuff, that particular stuff. I know some people who paint it because the models are kind of cool, but yeah, I don't know anybody who plays it, so I get the feeling that maybe it is kind of dying. Finding games that I can always repurpose a model is such a nice feeling. Oh yeah, I buy models frequently for games that I'm never going to play because I know I'm going to use them for something else that I want to use them for. Games like Song of Blades and Heroes, which you can use whatever models for. Games like Frostgrave, which you can use whatever models for. Games like This Is Not a Test. Again, you can use whatever models. So when you find models that are cool, they don't have to just go with that game, usually. Frequently, you can repurpose them for some other game. Let's see. Hey, I watched your video on the wet palette. I built my own, and I don't know how I lived without it. Thanks for the great video. Yeah, it's... Man. Like, I can't even imagine not using a wet palette. Like, if I had to sit down and paint some models, and somebody was, like, going to pay me to do it, but they're like, oh, you can't use a wet palette, I think I would have to refuse the money. Because it's so much... Again, guys who are listening to this, guys and girls, when I say guys, I mean people, you really want to go out and try the wet palette. Watch the wet palette video and then build your own. You need some like Tupperware or Gladware. You need some paper towel and you need some baking parchment. The baking parchment is maybe the hardest part to find, but still you should be able to get it at nearly any grocery store, supermarket, whatever. It will really, really, really help you thin your paints and up your game. And yeah, it's just really, it's one of the best things I've done for my painting skill in a long time. It's really excellent. So I'm glad that Dark Water Otter, that's a fun name, has enjoyed it, and I hope more of you enjoy it as well, because it'll really help you paint better. Anytime you see a model and you're like, man, it looks like it's got a lot of paint on it, that's not how the model's supposed to look. They're supposed to look like the paint is thinned down. It's not supposed to look like it's a painted model. It's supposed to look like the model is that color. That's the difference. If you can see the paint, you've put it on too thickly. And using a wet palette, I mean, if you just take a tile and you just put some paint on it, you've got this palette tile, a plastic plate or a piece of ceramic or whatever, and you just put some paint on it, and then you put some water on it, you can thin your paints that way, and it's great. The problem is that like within a minute or so, it'll dry, and then you're wasting paint. If you do that on the wet palette, that paint will stay liquid for a long time. And if you seal it every night or whatever, or every time after you're done painting your stuff, you can do some amazing. I mean, I've used paint that's been sitting there for a week, and we're talking about acrylics. Like when I went to school for art, we worked in oils, and oils take months to dry. The idea is that you can come back later and be like, I'm maybe not good with that shadow, and you can go back in and you can paint and tweak and do all that stuff. But man, acrylics dry very quickly generally, but when you put them on a wet palette, they stay wet longer, and you can keep using them longer. So, do I think that Games Workshop is getting better? I think, as I said in the video for Age of Sigmar, I think Age of Sigmar is a step in the right direction. I am still stunned by the fact that they don't have any... They don't really do much in the way of public relations. They don't really have much of any kind of social media content strategy other than their YouTube channel where that guy shows you how to paint stuff. They don't really use Twitter anymore. They cut that out. They stopped using Facebook for the most part. From what I understand, they have a Facebook page for each single separate store. And they're like, oh, then that way you can ask your local store questions, which they will tell you that they can't answer because they don't know, because nobody knows what's happening with Games Workshop. But they didn't want there to be one central place where all of the complaining could go, where everybody could see it, which is why they got rid of the Games Workshop Facebook page and made a separate Facebook page for every store. So if you complain at your local store, other people across the country or across the world don't see that. So they're, it was a smartish move on their part, but honestly, the fact is that they should just be answering questions, and they should be, I go to this thing in Madison, Wisconsin. There's a gaming distributor, a company that distributes and sells games from manufacturers like Games Workshop and others, and they are the ones that distribute that to stores, independent stores, like your local friendly game store. So I go to this conference, and then you sit there and listen to the different manufacturers. And for whatever reason, Games Workshop is always like the 8 o'clock in the morning seminar. And they basically do nothing except say, oh, this is a way that you could sell more stuff. They don't really do much in the way of answering questions or anything like that. They don't tell you what's coming out. They don't talk about the product. They just say that this is an option. This is a way you could sell more stuff. You could show people how to do this or show people how to do that. And the retailers that are there are all generally surly because they don't like Games Workshop. And then you go to another, seminar like right afterwards, like for a company like Privateer Press, and they will tell you what's coming out for the next 16 to 18 months. They're like, oh, well, this model's coming out here, and this game's going to be coming out at this time, and we're hitting March of this, and they just list everything out. And then you go to like Wizards of the Coast, and you go to their seminar, and they tell you what like the next 3 like Magic the Gathering systems, expansions are going to be, and they just. When you go to these seminars, they tell you stuff, and when you go to Games Workshops, they don't. They don't tell you anything. They don't give you, the retailer, that's what this conference is for. They don't really give them any information. So, to some degree, I think they're getting a little better. I think that they're starting to realize they need to get new blood into the hobby, but I don't know that overall. I think that they're doing necessarily a great job. What could GW change for the better in the way to go with things? I kind of just talked about that. If they were a little bit more open about what's going on, that would be really helpful. Wet Palette completely changed my painting as well. That's cool. I'm glad. Oh, hey, MC1 Gamer. Have you tried 15mm war games like Team Yankee, the old Cold World version of Flames of War? Also, they are launching an X-Wing style skirmish version of Flames of War with 15mm tanks. Any feelings about that? I have not played Team Yankee. I did play, and I still own a bunch of models for Flames of War. I've got a small American army, because I love Sherman tanks. The M4A1, which was the earliest Sherman M4 tank, with the rounded hull. That's in my mind when I hear the word tank. That's what I think of. That is the quintessential, in my mind, tank. They're not great. In the game, they helped us win the war because, from what I understand, they can't take a lot of damage, but they're very easy to repair. So they would get killed on the battlefield, they would sit there for weeks in the rain, someone would come out, drag it away, fix it up, patch it, and send it back out, and they were very easy to repair. But up against the German tanks, they did not necessarily have the firepower in a lot of situations. So that's kind of difficult to model in the game when you're just playing a single battle instead of the entire war. So I have a tendency to lose a lot, which is fine. I enjoy painting them. I don't know. Team Yankee, I've heard about it, and I haven't learned much about it, and I'd like to learn a little bit more down the road, but we'll see how it goes. Let's see here. What about Battle for Vendros? It's like the 40k Age of Sigmar. I have not heard about Battle for Vendros. I should look into that. I don't know anything about it. I'll definitely try to take a look and see how that. I don't know anything about it. Wet Palette helped me out as well, Ryan. Okay, well, good. I'm glad, Ryan. Like I said, if I could just I should just make a T-shirt just explaining how to use Wet Palette and walk around conventions, and I think that it would be helpful to people, or maybe like a big hat. Maybe not the hat. What are your opinion on the 40k end times theory? I think I touched on this a little bit earlier. I don't personally believe that they will Age of Sigmarify, if that's a word, 40k. I really don't think that they're going to go this direction, because if they take Age of Sigmar as the more intro game to people, and then if 40k is the more, well, this is when you want a little bit more crunch, you want more rules, you want more of that kind of stuff. I think that that's probably not a bad system for them to kind of do. If they made both games like super intro, they would anger so many more veteran Warhammer or Warhammer 40K fans that I don't know that they would survive it, frankly. So I don't think that that's a thing. They may move the story forward finally. That emperor's been sitting on that throne for 25 some years or whatever now, not doing anything, and the story itself has been completely static mostly for that whole time. So they might do that. That's a potential, but I don't know that they're going to change the rules that big. I may be wrong, but I don't think that's the case. Yes, also, MC1 Gamer, there was also about 30 times as many Shermans as the Germans had. Yeah, because they were also easy to build. They were easy to repair, and they were easy to build, and we had the ability to do both. I did read something recently that one of the reasons that we couldn't really build the really, really big tanks is because we had to ship them overseas, and if the tanks were too big, the ships would sink, or something along those lines. So we had to send smaller tanks, whereas the Germans, their factories were right there, and those tanks then could be as big as they wanted, but then, of course, it took a lot more resources to build them. So, what is the backstory for Sam Len's Tau selling skills? Okay, so many of you have probably seen me reference Sam Len's as a hell of a Tau salesman, and you may have seen actually the clip if you look in some of the past videos. And I think it was maybe 2012 or 2013, maybe 2013 Adepticon. Adepticon does this thing where they have, people call it the Bits Bazaar. When the tournaments get done at night, like around 10 o'clock or whatever, they clear off all the terrain, and then they have this big area set up where people can come and just bring the stuff that they want to sell. It's like a giant rummage sale for miniatures, and people will bring and just take over sections of table, and then they will just be like, okay, well, cool, I'm selling my orc army, or I'm selling this stuff that I never built, or whatever. And people walk through and you find deals and you haggle, and it's really cool, and it's this really interesting kind of like sense of camaraderie, and people are having a good time, and it's 10 o'clock at night, so people have been drinking cocktails for probably 10 hours at this point or whatever. And yeah, so that's a lot of fun. So one year I had decided to move towards moving into Chaos for 40K, and I didn't, because Tau was my first army. So I was like, I don't want to do the Tau anymore. I want to do Chaos, because I liked the modeling and sculpting ideas a little bit more. When I originally went with Tau, I went with Tau because it seemed to me like it would be the quickest to paint, and they were very quick to paint, and you don't generally put a lot of skulls and extra work into sculpting your Tau. So, but then I decided I really like the sculpting and the working and the bits and the modifications and the conversions, so I was like, well, hell, I'm going to move to Chaos because there's spikes and skulls and everything, and Tau are kind of boring, so I decided to do that. So I was selling my Tau stuff. So we're standing around this table at Adepticon, and I don't remember which night it was, maybe Friday night or Saturday night, and there's people walking around and looking at stuff and everything, and like I said, we've had some cocktails, and we're eating beer dip and chips and stuff, and I've got all my stuff laid out, and I have no fear of speaking in front of a group. You know what I mean? A lot of people are very afraid of the concept of public speaking. They just don't. It just makes them nervous, and I've never had that. I don't know why. I just never have. So I'm just kind of like saying, Tau for sale. Tau for sale. Get your Tau. And I'm just like barking, like I'm trying to get people to come to the circus. And people are like walking by, and I'm saying, and I'm just doing this. And I'm getting people to come and look at the Tau a little bit. And then Sam, who had more to drink than I, frankly, he then started helping. When I would stop barking for Tau for sale, he would do it, and he would do it a lot louder, and as you can see in the video, angrier, and with the finger. And I happened to be shooting with my camera, and I caught that, and it made me laugh quite a bit. And we all laughed about it, actually, all of us who were sitting around the table. And then eventually I just started putting it in videos from time to time because it was so funny. But yeah, so that's where the Tau for sale thing came. It was Sam at Adepticon helping me to get rid of my Tau. And that's the kind of stuff that goes on at Adepticon, frankly. It's, as I've mentioned hundreds of times, it is a great time, and everybody should go. Let's see here. I'm going to back up. I was talking a long story. How to prevent soaking a miniature in very liquid paint when using a wet palette. It's a little bit of a balancing act. Like, if your wet palette, you kind of want to add some paint in and then maybe just a touch of water and then sort of move it around. But the water should be, the paint should be thin. It shouldn't be water. If you put it on there, it's not a wash. But it should be pretty thin, and then you do multiple layers to kind of build things up, and that helps. Daniel Denny says, are you still playing Mercs? I have Mercs minis, and I haven't played in a long time because they've been allegedly coming out with 2.0 rules, which I just haven't seen yet. I'd like to get back into it once 2.0 comes out, but it's been a long kind of wait, and I'm still waiting, so maybe we'll see some stuff at Adepticon. That'd be cool. The Sherman was modified by the British in World War II with a bigger gun and it was designated the Firefly. Yes, that is because you can, in the open fire starter box for Flames of War, they're technically Shermans, but they're modified Shermans for the English and includes the Firefly. And that's a pretty good tank, actually, in that game. Let's see here. Google Battle for Vedros. It's Games Workshop's attempt to sell stuff at toy stores. Oh, yeah, that. I have heard a little bit about. I thought it was a separate game. Okay, yeah. So Games Workshop is starting to try to sell things in toy stores and in modeling stores even. Like there are kits that you can buy. They're like next to the model airplanes and model tanks and cars, and they're kind of model-y versions of like land speeders and stuff like that, and models. So yeah, it's interesting they're spreading out, and I'd like to look a little bit more into it and see. I have not actually seen the Battle for Vedros stuff for Games Workshop, but I will definitely look it up because I kind of want to be able to speak about it a little bit. By the way, I really want a t-shirt, but the postage to Finland is a crime by the USPS. Yeah, it really kind of is. And again, I apologize. It used to cost about $10 to ship a t-shirt to, say, like the UK. And then in January they changed it. And what they did was they made it, and I mentioned this in the other video, it used to be from 8 ounces to 32 ounces. That was considered international parcel. And every 4-ounce increment, the price went up. So at 8 ounces it was this, and then at 12 ounces it was this, and 16 and blah, blah, blah. And then in January, just this past January this year of 2016, they just said, okay, everything from 8 to 32 is now the 32-ounce price, which is 2 pounds, by the way. So that's why it's $22.50, actually. I'm only charging $22, but the actual fee, if you go look it up on the website, is $22.50. So I'm eating the 50 cents if I do end up shipping. And I've had some people buy them overseas, and I appreciate that. I've also noticed that some of the people have taken my advice and said, well, if you buy multiple shirts, like let's say you and 2 friends want to buy each a shirt, if you do it all in one, the price won't change because it's from 8 ounces to 32 ounces. 3 shirts weighs 29 to 30 ounces. So the price would be the same, and then you just split that $22 shipping 3 ways, which is like $7 and change. So that's a bit more reasonable. So let's see here. Google Battle. How wet should the paper of the wet palette be? Soaked through or damp? More damp. Then yeah, because the paper, again, you don't want to just use like regular like typing paper or copy paper. The wet palette paper, if you want it to, you don't want to use wax paper either because that won't work because it's not real permeable. You want baking parchment, and then it will let some water through but not too much, and it keeps it damp and hydrated from underneath, and that's what keeps the acrylic paint from not drying out so quickly. So yeah, what I normally do is I put the paper towel into the little plastic doohickey, whatever you're using, and then I pour water on that, and then I take the baking parchment and I lay that on top of the now wet paper towel. Some people will use sponges. Some people have used flannel, I've heard about, or not flannel, felt, pieces of felt that they get from the store, like the craft store or whatever, and all that kind of stuff. So those can work as well. I just use the paper towel because more often than not, at some point, I will do something wrong and paint will get around the edge of the paper and it will get in and soak into the paper towel, and then I can just chuck it later on when I decide to clean everything off, and it's not a big deal. But throwing away like felt to me seems slightly wasteful, but you could just probably wash it out in some fashion too. But either way, let's see, what else have we got here? Do you play bolt action? No, I wanted to play, well, I got friends that play Flames of War, but I think that I would maybe enjoy bolt action a little bit better because though I like the small little tanks of Flames of War, bolt action would have more guys and usually only has like 1, maybe 2 tanks. So yeah, I don't know. I like the gaming system for bolt action. I've read the book a little bit here and there, and I've watched some bat reps. I like the concept of putting all those dice into the bag for the number of units and then pulling them out to see which unit goes each turn, and which is, Age of Sigmar does the same sort of thing with the dice roll off on every turn. It's not like 40k where whoever wins the first turn, and then you just keep alternating back and forth, my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. The option that maybe it's my turn twice and then your turn, or in something like bolt action, it might be my turn 4 times in a row, but then I know, yeah, but he's still got more dice in that bag, so he's going to get a bunch of turns in a row down the road. So, I think that's a great concept. But yeah. So I think bolt action, if you're into World War II stuff and you like the more 28mm size stuff, and if you know people who play it and you like that kind of, just take a look at the rules and stuff, watch some bat reps. I know Beasts of War did some bat reps probably a year or so ago, so you might want to watch those and just see what you think about it. But yeah. Let's see here. You can also balance it, just talk with your opponent. That is, at this point, what I've been doing. I've been mainly just working with whoever I'm playing with, and we kind of figure things out. We follow the rules for Age of Sigmar, where I put down a unit, then you put down a unit, and then I put down a unit, and we just keep going back until one of us basically cries uncle and says, okay, I'm not going to put down any more units. And now the person who's next person it is to put the units down has to look at it and go, okay, well, if I put down too many models, not units, but models, then I will give this guy, my opponent, the silent death, the sudden death rule, and then they may get some added benefit. And that's kind of how it works. Obviously, if you're playing a tournament, that's a difficult thing to pull off. But yeah, I enjoy the fact that we're not, in this particular game, not really playing with points. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of gnashing of teeth, but I kind of like doing it that way. Now, I will not lie, I've got a friend who looks for the flaws in nearly every game system and tries to exploit them to some degree. And so he's like thinking about, well, this is what I'm going to do for my army and do all this kind of stuff. And so there are like that, but then we can maybe agree to not do it that way in the future. So we'll see how it goes. Let's see. Trying unbalanced games is part of linked scenarios. Yeah, MC1 Gamer, you're right. That's another kind of interesting thing, and that's part of the stuff that you get from some of the add-on books that they've done. So yeah. Let's see. There are 0 instructions in these Warsenal terrain boxes. Glad I got to listen to you while trying to figure it out. Yeah, I'm actually going to be doing a video soon about MDF terrain, like what it is, kind of how you build it, how you paint it, that kind of stuff. I got a bunch of MDF terrain from, it used to be called Brush for Hire, and they just recently became a new company. They just changed the name, which is now called Death Ray Designs. You guys are probably familiar with some of their stuff. They have a great series of terrain called Rust Point, and it's basically post-apocalyptic shanties, and they're great looking. They're just super cool. They're MDF, but they also come with plastic parts, like for the corrugated roofs and that kind of thing, and they're great stuff. So I've got a bunch of that stuff that I'm going to be building and like showing you like in a video about MDF, like how you glue it together, how you paint it, best practices for that, what you can kind of do with it. And there's tons of companies out there, Warsenal, Death Ray Designs, the other ones. Yeah, there's tons of people out there doing it. So yeah. Let's see here. What is my favorite Nurgle unit? Oh gosh. Favorite Nurgle unit is probably, well, the Putrid Blight Kings are pretty awesome. They look cool, and they're actually not bad in the game. They're pretty decent in the game. One of my favorite models, just all told, ever, is probably what they now call the Lord of Plagues, but they used to call him just the Nurgle Chaos Lord. You've probably seen me mention him in my videos and refer to him as Old Drippy. I originally built him for my 40k Chaos, and that was... I made him 40k-ified in that I put a backpack, like a chaos backpack on him. I put a pistol on his hip, but he still had that big honking axe. And he also, I glued a bayonet like stuck right into his chest, and like he's like, I don't care, you know what I mean? Because he's a badass. So that's Old Drippy. I just recently built New Drippy, which is the actual regular, fantasy version, and he is. Like I said, he's just a Lord of Plagues now. And I painted him roughly the same. I did not modify him much at all. But I did just recently find a third set of that model downstairs in the basement, and so I might do a heavy conversion on him to make him into something else for Age of Sigmar, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah. Let's see here. Canadian postage rates are also violent. Cargo planes run 24/7 and fuel is cheap. No, I agree. I don't know what the Postal Service is thinking about, frankly, because yeah, it's like $15 or $20 to send it just to Canada. I mean, I am honestly if I drove north for 6 hours tops, I'd be in Canada. I'm not that far away. I'm in the northern part of America. So, I agree. It is weird. I was thinking to pick up the Italy and Armies of the Axis because I like playing hard mode. I also play Chaos Space Marines and Dark Angels. Well, then, from what I understand, yeah, you are playing hard mode in that situation. Yeah, I mean, I think with bolt action, pretty much any kind of whatever force you like the look of is one that you should, I mean, like I said, I was playing Americans mainly just because I really liked. I love the Shermans, the M4A1. Like the M4A3 is not bad. I like it just fine, but the M4A1, to me, that rounded cast hull as opposed to the welded rectangular hull, that's the whole thing. That to me is the look, and that's everything's what's cool. I use 10 Blight Kings. I will eventually also be using 10 Blight Kings. I have 5 completed, and I will be building, like I said, 5 more soon. I was thinking to pick up the, let's see. Does the new AOS battle boxes match up okay against each other? So like there's the starter box that's got those Chaos Dudes and the Sigmarines in them, which I keep calling them Sigmarines, even though that's not really what they're called. They're called Sigmarites. I mean, you definitely play them. Since there's no points anymore, it's very difficult to say, well, do they match up well together? I think that they do, probably. I have not played those two forces against each other. I bought the starter box, and I've started to build a little bit of the Chaos Dudes, but I haven't really gone too far with them. And I was kind of thinking I was maybe going to sell the Sigmar guys to a friend of mine, and maybe we're going to split that way, but it hasn't really gone forward, so they're sitting in the basement. But, yeah, that's kind of... that the idea, I guess, is that you buy this starter box so that you have, and a lot of people would like to do is they'll like go in with a friend, like, hey, I'll buy the starter box, and then you pay me half or whatever, and then you get these guys, and I get these guys, and then we play against each other. So I would think that they're probably pretty well, locked in together. Yeah. Just trying not to cut off any poor little rat guy's feet, because that won't be fun to glue back on. This guy's even got a tail. I have to admit, I think this is a bit of an older kit. There's a lot of flash. Well, not flash. There's a lot of mold lines, and they're pretty pronounced. That thing I was doing before where I was scraping off the mold lines, I'm going to be doing a lot of that on these models because I get the feeling these are a bit older models. You can even tell just by the fact that everything's just got, like, the details are not quite as crisp as some of the newest stuff, and I think that just comes from producing stuff out of the models over time, and it also may come from maybe the original manufacturing process. I don't know a ton about injection molded plastic industry, but I do know that these models are not as sharp. Like the details are not as sharp as, say, like the Blight Kings or the Varangard. Actually, the Varangard are almost too sharp because there were a lot of times I was holding parts to wait for them to glue, and I was like, ow. Because there's so many spikes on those guys, and they would actually, be very pokey, is my point. All right, there's more guys. Little rat torsos all cut off. Let's see here. So I've been doing this about, 2 hours and 7 minutes now. This has been a long one, and I appreciate all the people who've watched. I do have to go to the dentist in 50 minutes, so I think I'm probably going to cut it here, and I appreciate everybody who's been watching, and like I said, I want to do more of these in the future. I may do another one of them up here before I get everything moved downstairs. I kind of have to get some electricity issues figured out downstairs in the basement for my computer and everything, so that might take a little bit of while, but yeah, I think that this has worked out pretty well, and I want to, again, thank all the viewers and everything. And let me see here. Pow! So there I am. And again, like I mentioned, right there, if you're thinking about the t-shirt, it's limited edition. It's only going to be available until March 1st, which is Tuesday coming up. And then they will not be available anymore after that. And I'll ship them out to the people. Once I get them produced, they'll be produced immediately after the first. And yeah, so thanks again to everybody who's been watching, and I really appreciate it. And if you have any like leave comments below. Like these comments that have been going on over here in the window evidently do not stay. But if you have other comments, feel free to comment in the normal YouTube video that pops up in about another half hour or so of this, and then that'll be cool. And I, as you know, if you've been watching me for any amount of time, I do have a tendency to answer comments quite frequently. So anyway, I've been having a good time, and I hope that you have as well. And thanks for watching.